Anyway, I also think.
Yes. And I talked about that a little bit because we.
All righty, we're ready, Madam City Recorder, to record. All right, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Memphis City Council for December 2nd, 2025, and get the roll call, please.
Counselor Belts,
Here.
Counselor Carey,
Here.
Counselor Lopez,
Present.
Counselor McKeel? Here. Counselor Oberst?
Here.
Counselor Ridgway?
Here.
Mayor Coons? I am present. And Counselor Belts, would you lead us in the flag salute this evening, please? Thank you. That brings us to our item consent calendar. And tonight, included in your packet were the minutes of the council meeting of November 18th. Were there any corrections, additions?
Well, I move that we accept the, yes, the minutes.
Counselor.
Second.
Yeah, just if we could have a consideration for a friendly amendment to the piece from the public testimony where the Cassidy Wiedemann was talking about the installation of the, traffic consideration on Stadium. And the minutes say that it was, she asked for a red flashing beacon. Actually, I think it was a rapid flashing beacon. I think a red, that would be, a red flashing would be a stop, and the rapid flashing would be activated. So not a big deal, but I think there's perhaps we ought to get that as she said it, I believe.
Does that comment, Counselor Oberst?
Yeah, I concur. That's what she said. So.
Counselor McKeel, would you amend your motion to accept that change?
I will amend my motion to accept the change to the rapid flashing beacon.
And your second, Counselor Oberst? You're
No, second still, yeah.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any other comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that's great. Thank you for catching that. That brings us to public comment. We do allow time for public comment for items not on our agenda. And I'm seeing that none have been brought forward this evening in the room. Have we had anything online?
There have been no online requests for comments.
All right, thank you very much. We did all receive an email last week, or week before, I believe, that individual asked that be considered for public comment, and we were all able to read it. We are, I know Chief Isaiah Haynes has prepared some information in response, and we will be getting more information about that issue in the future. So we will record that was received, Phyllis, and that we did acknowledge it with the public as presented to all of us. With that brings us to our first presentation this evening, where we meet with our Transportation Commission. And so we're excited to have Russ Cooper or Isaiah Haynes, or one of our two co-staff leaders, bring members of the Transportation Commission up so we can hear more about what they're doing.
Thank you, Mayor Kuntz and members of council. This is Sean Robbins and Kyle Johnson, and Parker Robbins back here is the assistant that will help out with this, I'm sure. But these are members of the Transportation Commission that are going to provide the update. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Kuntz. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about what the Transportation Committee has been doing for the last 18 months or so. First, I want to give a shout out to both Russ and to Chief Haynes for their help with the committee's operations for the last 18 months. It's nice having dual staff members. And so we really appreciate that they're both associated with our committee. I also want to give a thanks to the two people sitting over here, Mr. Oberst and Ms. McKeel, who have been the council reps, not at the same time, unfortunately, because that would be an interesting duel in that, but for their support. I also want to thank the council for their support of the issues of transportation. I noticed that it's one of your goals for this year, and you've developed some strategies. And just know that the Transportation Commission is here to help out with that. It's part of the ordinance that you adopted establishing the Transportation Commission. So I'm going to step out of line and just say on behalf of the commission, please get us involved with stuff. As you'll hear from Sean, we've been doing quite a bit, but I think personally we have a lot more capacity to help out with transportation. And transportation, as you all know, is a huge issue and it's changing rapidly. And so we took a look at as Sean will point out, we took a look at the proposed transportation plan, and that it's been, 15 years since there was a last one, that this next one should probably come much sooner than that. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Sean or his assistant, whoever's going to make the presentation.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Sean Robbins. I don't know how many, I've been on the commission or a committee, what is it now? It's commission now. Yeah, we're official. It's been a few years, and I just had a couple notes of some things that we went over during the past year to 18 months or so. It seems like we've gotten quite a bit done this time. There was some citizen concerns that were brought to us by Justice Mickelson. I think he was a student at Western Oregon, right? Yeah. And so he brought some concerns about, some stuff on Gwynn Street. There's been multiple concerns about speeding and some unsafe intersections. And so we've been, we've had the data collector on Gwynn Street a few times to just kind of collect that data. And then we have specifically on Gwynn and Broad Street, we ended up extending the yellow curb paint by 40 feet just to help, some sort of bigger vehicles were kind of parking there, and it was making it hard to see and actually caused a pretty decent accident. So we kind of trying to tighten that area up a little bit. And that was one of the first things we did this year. And then, as far as the transportation system plan, it seems like it's focusing, heavily on bike and ped projects. And that's kind of why we changed to the Transportation Commission to begin with, just because it's more than just traffic. It's all kinds of different modes of transportation. So, of course, financing will be an issue, but it's trying to get a more strategic plan for, future bike ped projects is what we're doing. And along with that, the Safe Routes to School has been completed, and we are going to apply for another grant in the spring, it looks like, to continue on with different stuff. But whatever the leg that we were doing, it has been completed. So that was a big thing. And then there was also some citizen concerns about Gentle Avenue. Didn't have any speed signs on it. And it goes between Monmouth Avenue and Catherine Street. And there's just no speed signs. And it's a pretty wide street. So we, I think, Russ, we got 6 speed signs. I believe 3 go in each direction put up on that street, because it's a 25-mile-an-hour street, but it's a pretty wide, open street. So I think there was some issues with people speeding on there. And that is a collector street too. So it's a, decent street. And then, Linda Bersani, she's been doing a lot with the bike stuff and trying to do the education, in MES specifically. And it sounds like they're also trying to get it into the Central School District, but they want to try to get it as part of the PE curriculum to have Cycle Oregon. They have a trailer they bring out with bikes and stuff and do that as part of the actual school curriculum instead of like a thing during the summer or, you know, on a weekend day. And there's talks of getting that going in the spring as well of 26. So that would be nice. And then one more citizen concern was on the east side of town between the intersection of Bentley and Heffley, just a really weird intersection. And there was some people just complaining about a lot of rolling stops or just no stops or nothing. And another one of our members, John Love, he lives in the area, so he kind of watched it. He kind of watched out a couple times, and he did notice a lot of rolling stops and a lot of, you know, kind of confused traffic too. I mean, so Isaiah was talking about having a little more focused enforcement, you know, mainly not really too much you can do, I guess, just, you know, get, hey, we're watching, and, you know, there is stop signs there, just kind of just to let people know how it all works there. And then in the last meeting, there was an issue about the bottleneck around the high school on 16th Street. And we just, you know, we're going to talk about it more, but we were, you know, maybe thinking there could be a right turn only or something, you know, during certain hours, because it's just creating a big bottleneck.
That's
And-
been implemented
Oh, it has been.
at both Talmadge and Central High School right now. There are signs that say right turn only when traffic is thick. You know, it's not going to solve the problem because people will still think they get to go and they get to go. But that has got implemented in the end of September, beginning of October.
Oh,
So
perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was you know, it seemed like kind of the only way. I know it's not really an enforceable thing. I don't think, but
no, it's a parking lot issue,
but
right? It's
but
come down to parking.
helps people
Yeah,
get in the right direction.
we'll see. Yeah, she's good.
No, I mean, that was pretty much the main points that I had. I don't know if you had anything else. Those are kind of the main things that we went over this year. It seems like we had, you know, we've been doing quite a bit more and having more citizen engagement, I think, as well. There might have been one or two that I missed in there too, but I kind of got the years all blended together. But those were the main points I felt like presenting. So
Yeah, that's great. And I do appreciate, right? We added a lot of responsibility because it used to be traffic signs and speeds and
yeah.
adding all these other things. So to hear that you're still looking for work is very good. Other comments or questions for the commission?
It was perfect. It was good.
Yep, Counselor King.
Thanks for the good work you guys are doing and have done and will continue to do. We look forward to hopefully a successful application for the Safe Routes to School to sort of close some of those loops. And I was glad to hear that you looked closely at the transportation plan, the draft that's out there. You know, and there's a lot of good stuff in it, virtually all of it. I guess the question that I would ask you to consider as a commission, same thing I'm considering, how can we solve and how can we add another east-west lane of travel? Right now, we you know 99 is there, and Main Street turning into Monmouth is there, and that's really the only way effectively that you can move from one side to the other. And you can cut through on Madrona. People hate that, but there might be some solution. And we heard what ODOT's position on it is. They're not interested in addressing capacity. They're more interested in managing capacity. So you guys are certified smart in that area, so you'll know what to look for. And hopefully we'll be able to have some change. There's more of that to come. I'm going to reread the thing and see if we can find a way. And I know this is one, but you guys can sometimes be the squeaky wheel. I talked to Russ and he told me that the middle rapid flashing beacon at Church Street is not going to be installed. So they've got them on the curbs, but not in the middle. And if you go to, and I understand that there are concerns about getting run over, but boy, I'm telling you, the impact of the middle beaker down on Madrona, in front of Dairy Queen is significant, whereas it's good, at Church Street, but it's not as impactful without that middle one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So again, if you guys look at that and you agree, then maybe we could put some pressure on those folks. You know, and then one of the things that I would like to see, and I've talked briefly with Russ about it without any real detail, but I feel like we could use a barrier at the end of Craven Street. If you're driving down that at night, you could drive right into if you don't know where you're going, drive right into Ash Creek. And we've got the barrier over on High Street. And we had a fairly bad accident down there over the summer that might have been mitigated with a barrier. And then I think we're all worried, we're all concerned, and we're all looking at oversized vehicles parking in residential areas or collector streets. Now I'm not talking about just motorhomes and the things we're talking about there, but got a guy in my neighborhood that's got a big stock trailer. And, you know, it's right on Cherry Park, just parked on the way here today. And, boy, you get a bus through there, if you've got something on the other side, that's tough. And, you know, maybe there's nothing to do about it, maybe it's not a problem, but it might should be something that could be evaluated, whether we need no parking or restricted parking times and those narrower streets. So anyway, again, thanks for your work and Kyle, go ahead.
Can I respond? The issue of the east-west routes in Monmouth is very much tied into east-west streets of Independence, because cars and particularly bicycles will form their own route. And so we need to be in discussion with the city of Independence on how to make those things possible, because as we grow as a city, and as Independence grows as a city, the coordinated traffic plan will be huge.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you both very much. Do you happen to know the names of all of your members on your committee currently that you could give them a shout out or?
Sure.
For us, that would be great.
Linda Bersarni is our chair. I'm vice chair. The other members include Sean and John Love. Is that all of us?
And then Mike Kissel.
Mike Kissel.
On there. I think he's a secretary, actually.
Yeah.
Made him the secretary.
Yep.
Great,
So
thanks. Just want to give them a shout out. We always like to, and if you have openings, we always like to use this opportunity to recruit folks who are interested in that work. So
yeah, and people are welcome whether they're members or not. So
that's absolutely true. All right, thank you both very much. And
Thanks, guys.
yep.
Thank you.
And please invite the young member back anytime she wants. She's welcome to come back.
Thanks, Suzanne, for entertaining her.
Yes. That brings us, speaking of transportation, to an update and report on our unique form of transportation, our Monmouth Independence trolley. So looks like we have staff Saber Jewel and Carter Craig joining us.
Thank you for the segue while we get our technical presentation set up for you. Give us just 1 second. Phyllis, will you click share me? If you haven't already. Thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. All right, good evening, counselors. Thank you, Mayor and Chief Haynes, for having Carter and I come up and speak to you about the results of our trolley ridership survey. As mentioned, I'm joined to you tonight with Carter Craig, who is our community planner, and he helped work this concept of the survey from the design of the survey to hiring the survey writers to also helping me digest this data this evening. So we're going to be able to go through those results. Now, this project happened in 2024 for the first time. Tool Design, which was the company that helped us with all of our logo and branding and concept of the trolley, did a similar survey. They gleaned about 500 answers for their survey. They asked around the same kind of questions that we did for ours because we wanted to be able to compare those results. And while they did have considerably more than they did, we did our survey for 1 month, late June through late July, and received 128 surveys during that time. We hired 2 students from Western Oregon University to go and do these surveys for us. We asked that they go during different times of the day. We asked that they go on the weekends and really spread out when they were on the trolley so that they were able to get a pretty decent set of folks. Now, when we were looking at the data, we kind of split it up into 2 groups of how we were going to digest it. And one of that is like who is writing, and then the why and the how, okay? So for this first group of the who, we're looking at it from how old they are, the city where they reside, the access that they have to an automobile, and whether they possess a driver's license at this time. For the age, what we found was really similar to what we saw before in the survey that was done by Tool Design. Half of the riders are between the ages of 16 to 25. And then the other section is there. We do have a small senior ridership from what we were able to tell, 65 plus at 8%. And so we did see this similar to the ridership survey that we did before. Now, since our last survey, we've seen growth in riders from Dallas. Sorry that this is not showing up as well as it should be. Riders in Dallas were not even represented in our last survey at all, but now they're at 10%, which we thought was interesting. Salem ridership stayed similar. As you can see, there is a slight more ridership in Monmouth and Independence, and we saw that in the last survey as well. Now, nearly half of the riders do have a driver's license. Now, of course, because we had a large subset of folks who are under the age of having a driver's license. So that data point makes a lot of sense. But it is interesting that folks, even with a driver's license and access to automobiles, are choosing to ride the trolley. So the other half is made up of folks who have the vehicle. So 52% do not have a vehicle, while 16.5% do. And then there's 31 who share a vehicle. That's my household. That may or may not be my husband featured in that photograph. But we have one vehicle. He will typically ride the trolley downtown for events so that we don't have to do much of the sharing of the vehicle. It's made it very easy for that. Now we're looking at the how and the why. So it's how frequently they're riding, why they're riding, and how they are getting there. We have a lot of occasional riders, and occasional is less than 1 to 2 days a month. That's a big chunk. But if you looked at that 1 to 2 days per week, that's a pretty large group. And then also that 3 to 5 days a week is something that you see come up later when we talk about the sense of community and ridership, people who frequently ride like that, the relationships they have with other riders, as well as the drivers as that grows. If you've ever ridden the trolley on any day where we've done a Dress Like Fred, it's a testament to that, right? The conversations that the drivers are having with the passengers. Now, the how they're riding, really pretty identical, I would say, to the 2024 data. Large group using it for shopping, specifically grocery shopping. And riders mentioned using the trolley was a way for them to help afford car maintenance. We had a couple of riders mention, I had a part go out of my car. I can't fix that part. This helps me to not have to spend money on ride shares and other ways to get around while saving up for that. And we all know that ride shares, they can be expensive, they can sometimes be unreliable, and some people find them to not feel very safe. So this is a safe, reliable transportation method. Another entry point that we picked up was how they were getting to the trolley stop. And I think if I were to do anything like this again, I would say, what is your distance to get to the trolley stop, right? Because what I have found is it takes me about 13 minutes to walk to the trolley stop. We saw that we have 10% people featured in this survey taking a wheelchair. Others are biking. The vast majority of people getting to trolley stops are doing a physical activity to get there, right? They are walking, they are riding. It is not something that's lackadaisical necessarily to get there. So only, I believe it was a little less than 9% are being dropped off at a stop. So I would be interested if we ever did this again to see what the average time is to take to get to the trolley, because I think that would be a very, very interesting way to look at that. We received a good bit of feedback. The survey takers were able to capture some of the quotes that you see here. The one in the middle is the one I kind of referred to earlier, that this was just an observation from one of the survey takers about the natural connectivity that people find while riding. I think that was an unintended consequence, right? We can never have too many ways to have community. People knowing, hey, did so-and-so get on the trolley today? We see them every day for work. Another layer of people checking in. And I just thought that that was something that I don't think we expected, and a little delightful surprise. So I think that's all the data points that we covered on our end. Did you have anything to add before we jump to questions? I think if we did it all over again, and I'm not sure the capacity we would have financially in Argert to do this, we had some marketing money that we had to be able to produce the survey and get folks out there. Of course, I would love to see this happen again, because I think we could go a little bit deeper with it for sure. Any questions from the council?
Yes, Councilor Bell.
I just, thank you. Thank you for the work. Thank you for the information. These are all things that Chariots collects as well. When you get to doing it again, which I would love to hear about this in 2 years, not only ask people about the distance, but the time, because you will find when you compare that with the mental logic that people make of driving, people think it takes them much less time to drive somewhere than it actually does. And so it's just really important to make sure you figure out how far do people think they're actually walking, and do a zip code to zip code, or even like a zip code to or address to the point where they're picking up the trolley. You can do some very specific data collection and figure out exactly how far it is they walked, because most people are willing to walk a quarter mile really easily. And so, but then, and how long that takes is also very important. And that's typically based on age and a number of other things. As an old lady that walks slower, I can say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Others? Yes, Councilor Ridge.
It kind of along that line, if there is more data being collected, something that might be interesting to find out is if a fee would decrease their likelihood of taking that as mode of transportation, or whether, and I don't know how you would word the question, like how would you find that range that's kind of the sweet spot of not too much, but enough that it helps offset costs?
Absolutely. That's great.
And again, and Councilor Belts, with your experience, that's probably something Chariot has some wording for in the kind of work they do. So
I love not having to reinvent the wheel of survey design whenever possible. Absolutely.
Plus, often asking also if a monthly pass were available. That seems to be more, people are more willing to buy a monthly pass, if even based on the dollar amount. So
great. Thanks, y'all.
yes, Councilor.
Good work. This was a really good start. And I hope we can do it again. I think you guys will probably be the ones to make the pitch to the new commission that's going to be there in terms of the need for this sort of thing. Some things that I'd like to suggest that I think we could derive additional data. I know this is a 30,000 foot deal, which is a good start, but we really need to do this during the school year. And then when we ask the question, or they say they're going to school, which school, what time of day, how many commuters do we have to Central and to Western? That might have to do with loading. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that could, could tell us. I think the days, the day that the survey was taken, so we could get and that probably is available with the trolley people. Chariots probably has the frequency, how many Mondays, how many Tuesdays. That's an important piece. I think if we are interested in utilizing this data with our business community, we'd want to drill a little more down on shopping and where are you shopping? Grocery, where are you going for grocery? And you're going to get a number of people didn't want to answer. I get that, but there's a number that I think would be happy to if they had the context for it. And the big take home for me is, and I think that while it's a small N, I still think we've got to be aware that 9.6% of the riders were in wheelchairs. So we need to be very cognizant of our entry points and off points to make sure those are wheelchair accessible. I'm not suggesting they aren't, but we just need to make sure we do that. I know we've got a ramp to help with that, but wherever we place those stops needs to be in a place that would be safe for someone in a wheelchair to exit or enter.
Yeah, and I know that's why the stops are where they are, and that's one of the reasons, for example, they have to make the loop off of Heffley because there wasn't, Chariots they have a way to measure all that. So they came out and picked the stops based exactly on that. There are federal requirements they have to meet, and that's why they couldn't do it on Main Street at Heffley because there wasn't anywhere that met the requirement for the ramp. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, good. We're ahead of the game. Nice work.
Right. All right. Thanks, y'all. Oh, wait.
Yep, Councilor Lopez.
Apologies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to express my thanks for doing this. I think involving students in this kind of data collection is really an amazing thing. It helps them to see, the real world implications of their work as opposed to something just being a thought experiment. Within that view, I'd encourage as we talk about the future and what the future may hold for the trolley and or for surveys like this, I think we ought to do it again. The question is when, right? Not if, but when. And I don't have the answer to that, but just know that you'll have my support in doing this again. When we're talking about different questions that could be added or different data points that we could add, I always like to try to tie things to, again, those real world implications. Unless the question we're asking answers an issue or another question or a broader implication that we can directly tie it to, I don't think it's worth asking. Because we could ask 1 million questions and you get 2 people that decide to stay on this trolley long enough to fill out the questionnaire. So every question that we ask additionally is going to decrease the number of responses that we have or number of complete responses that we have. It's also going to muddy some of the field of view in terms of trying to decide what to do with this information. So within here, right, some of the questions that I found the most useful thus far, right, were just the demographic information I think is fascinating. I also picked up on that 9.6% of riders use wheelchairs. I'd like to know more about who we're serving in those ways, and I think the notes about what kind of shopping activities they're doing, right? When we think about how we can fund this long term, answering some of those things will be critical in terms of how we address those, those fiscal considerations. So I just urge you to not ask questions for question's sake, but make sure to tie them to very specific deliverables that help us, address the issues we're facing. So. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Sabre and Carter. That was fantastic. Appreciate your input. Okay, that brings us to our business agenda. We have a very exciting presentation this evening from Mark Landau in our Public Works Department, our annual TMDL report. Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for giving us this time to discuss the 2025 Stormwater TMDL update. We are still working on under the same stormwater matrix as last year. We used this matrix from 2023 to 2028.
I guess we should say what TMDL is, since
Total
you and
maximum
I
da-
know what it is.
Total maximum daily loads. Our annual TMDL accomplishment report was submitted to DEQ on November 19th and was included in tonight's council packet. 6 of our staff members attended stormwater training in 2025. All 36 of our outfalls were inspected twice in 2025. We updated the inspection form to include pipe size and material. We cleaned and inspected catch basins in 2 of our 4 quadrants of town. We removed brush and trees from one of our outfall detention basins. Street sweeper removed 69.5 tons of debris from the city streets. We will have removed approximately 480 cubic yards of leaves from the city streets this year. Our annual participation in the Public Works Week, we visited the Monmouth Elementary and Ash Creek Elementary schools. We had a show and tell with the Public Works equipment and presented a stormwater PowerPoint this year to the kids. We continue our partnership with Lucky Mute Watershed Council and are creating a partnership with Ash Creek Water Control District and reviewing their 10-year plan. The Friends of Gentle Woods Park, they're doing a great job in the park along the middle fork of Ash Creek, restoring native vegetation in the riparian area corridor. We partnered with Lucky Mute Watershed Council for riparian restoration and maintenance project, removing invasive plants along the middle fork of Ash Creek. 507 potted trees and shrubs were planted with deer deterrent cages placed around them. 3,100 bare root trees were planted, totaling 3,607 trees and shrubs were planted. There was also invasive tree removal along Ash Creek also. We had a rare student this last year, and you guys met her last year at this time. Gabby was her name. Gabby created informational flyers and traveling information booth to set up for events such as 4th of July in the park and also Polk County Fair. We did not have to investigate any illicit discharges or complaints leading to enforcement actions in 2025. This year, we subscribed to a GIS system called Diamond Maps. This will give us the opportunity to record our GPS coordinates for all of our assets in the stormwater system and to have them on a GIS map. We will be able to track maintenance and illicit discharges, which will address our record keeping. In 2026, we plan to do the following in the stormwater department: jet clean and TV inspect storm lines, clean 50% of the catch basins in town, and collect all asset inventory with our GIS, i.e. catch basins, manholes, and outfalls. And at this point, do you guys have any questions for me?
Questions about stormwater and total daily maximum loads, maximum daily loads? Councilor Lopez, please start us off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm just going to start off with a comment. First, goodness, thank you. And second, I think you collectively heard our jaws drop when you shared the total yardage removed, total cubic yardage removed for the street sweeping program and the leaf haul. 480 cubic yards is much higher than I would have imagined. That's a huge amount. I mean, we are a leaf city, or a tree city rather. Maybe we're a leaf city too. And just how immense that 1 point alone in a long list of accomplishments is. So I just want to thank you and the team for doing the great work to make this real. I think sometimes it's difficult in terms of communicating an acronym, right, to the real world impacts on for our our residents. And there's a lot that you're doing here that really makes Monmouth a much more livable, clean, and healthy space. And so I deeply appreciate that.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to the crew. Thank you.
Yeah, it never sounds sexy, but it is pretty awesome. Other questions or comments, Councilor Carey?
Thanks, Mark. Good report. Good news all the way around. A couple things that I really want to laud you guys for. I think the partnerships you're developing with the Lucky Mute Watershed Council, I think is good. They do good things. We're doing good things, and I think we can work collaboratively with that. And the Friends of Gentle Woods Park as well. Had a work day on Saturday that I missed, but I was down there and looked, and they're removing ivy and a variety of other things. We've got some native plants that have been planted, and most of those made it through the summer. So we're looking forward to increased vegetation along the stream side, which helps the temperature and all of that, which is one of the things that you are concerned with. How has the stormwater fee helped in this process? Has that been instrumental, or has that been just a shifting of revenue source?
No, it's helped us by adding an employee in our department, a stormwater technician, which is going to be a huge thing for our department. It's going to make it so we can actually get out and do more activities. So that's a really big thing. And we're out doing our outfall inspections. We'll be able to be out looking for illicit discharges if they happen. But it's been a big thing.
It's good, and I think we got really a positive report on our public safety fee last time we were here, and so I think if there's a way we could promote that or publicize the fact that this stormwater fee that we added a year ago has been really instrumental, and in cleaning the water source that runs through our town. And the other that I think we could probably highlight a bit more. I mean, you guys, you know what you're talking about, so it's old hat. But if you pull 600 or 65.9 tons off the streets, without that goes into the storm drains, that goes into the Ash Creek. One of those, I didn't write down how many outflows we have, but that complicates the system. Plus, there's mercury that can accumulate on those city streets, and any number of other things that come from internal combustion engines. So I think that's really, and I don't know that it's appreciated. Everybody, gets all geeked up about the leaf removal, especially in my neighborhood. But I think there's more to it than that. And keeping our streets clean keeps our creeks clean, and is good work. I think publicizing that more. You don't need, I mean, Sabre could do that kind of stuff. She got nothing to do. So put her on that, and we could get a little, and maybe even the mayor could write some in the notes about that. Anyway, good work. Really nice report.
One of the big pushes from DEQ this year has been the temperature TMDL. And so we're going to be doing a stream study. It covers the riparian area, and that's why we've been planting so many trees over, I'd say probably the last 10, 12 years that we've been working with the Lucky Mute Watershed Council to get trees. We were ahead of the game on that, and kudos to Lucky Mute. But we're going to need to, concentrate on planting more trees along the stream side.
Counselor McKeel, then Counselor Ober.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a great report. To just on what Councilor Carey said about getting information out to the public. I know in my neighborhood, I've seen people now, because there was something in the newsletter a while ago about we don't want leaves down into the sewer system. We now have neighbors who are pushing leaves away from the grates so that we don't have added. And I started doing it in front of my house, but I noticed it's going on up and down the street. So having that information out there is really helpful. But I think it would be helpful to know the tons as well, because, and the tons that, as Councilor Carey said, would go into the system if we didn't pick it up. So that's amazing. I really enjoy that you are going and talking with kids, because kids don't necessarily understand why we have city government other than we have police officers and a city hall. But I think having them work on the activities that you had really can open them up to thinking about what our city does for our people in town. So kudos for that. I think that really makes it, I think they talk about it in social studies texts, but that means nothing compared to activity. I just have one concern, and it's on page 29 under the 2.2 weaknesses. There's a statement in there that is a process to update information has not been developed or implemented, and inventory numbers are not consistent. I was worried about what you meant by the inventory numbers. Are we not keeping track of the equipment that we have, or?
No, this is mainly concerning our catch basins, how many we had in town. That's what this Diamond Maps is going to address. We're going to be able to go out there, put our GPS coordinate ball out there, and it will actually give us the coordinates. At the end, it's going to give us a count of how many we have, how many catch basins, how many manholes that are storm related, how many outfalls. We already know how many outfalls we've got, but it'll keep track of that. And because when I gave our stormwater consultant the numbers, I didn't have a definitive number on how many additional catch basins with all the new subdivisions added into it.
Mm.
And so that's why she put that in there as not adequate count of assets.
Okay, love technology. It'll be great to have that recorded.
We're very excited for it, because we're gonna have different layers, a water layer, sewer layer, storm. It's gonna be very impressive.
That's great. School kids would love that too. No, sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
I wanted to echo Carol's comments about, talking with the community about what you want to do. I think often when people think about city government, they think about Isaiah's department and maybe the library, and they don't really stop and think about the details of what public works entails, because it's a lot. I know you guys do a lot of things, and I think the more folks can appreciate exactly what it is we provide for them, the better. So in my usual way, I had to do a little math. 480 cubic yards. A yard is 27 cubic feet. Okay, that's 13,000 cubic feet of leaves. To put it in a little bit, more, you can wrap your mind around how big a cubic foot is. And what did you say, John? 66 tons of stuff in the street sweeper? 132,000 pounds of crud off the street that otherwise would have gone into the storm system and who knows where else, So thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, I'll have better numbers at the end of the year. These are just numbers to now, but I'll have better numbers of our actual loads. I think last year we were at 71 dump truck loads of leaves. And so I'll have loads, weight, and so, and then I'll also have our final count on our street sweeping debris.
How's compliance with the schedule on leaf pickup? Because it seems to me like I'm seeing a lot of landscapers putting leaves out in front of people's house on off weeks and just people raking and dumping whenever. I wondered if the postcards were less effective than the bigger mailer that we've done in the past. And does there come a point where we need to think about enforcement on that? Because otherwise, if there's no repercussion for putting your leaves out whenever you feel like, people will continue to put their leaves out whenever they feel like. And if we're having storm drains clogged by leaves that people have put out at an inappropriate time, then that's something to consider.
Yeah, I bang my head against the wall with the amount of house contacts I have to go talk to people about their leaf piles that are out when they're not supposed to be out. And it's a yearly thing. Some of them are repeat offenders. Some of them are new residents. So it's hard to get them to comply with the dates that we have on there and do what they're supposed to. But in general, it works.
Yeah, good. And along with the education and things, since we did do a lot of work on the illicit discharge, and you mentioned that we haven't had any complaints because remember that is complaint driven. So getting our education out saying, hey, if you see something, say something, right? If you see people dumping stuff down these nice little grates, that's not what they're for. Then, making sure that we're communicating that is something folks should be reporting to us. So good, Councilor Ridgway.
Thank you. I was fascinated by the number of trees and bare root. I'm assuming they're all trees, but maybe some plants that have been installed along the along the creek. An impressive number for scale. Is that does that mark a near completion of a project, or is there still lots to do in that area, or how far along do you think we are?
There's still work to do. There will be constant work to do to stay up on it. I mean, you're gonna have trees that aren't gonna make it. You're gonna have trees that just don't mature and create the shade that DEQ is looking for. But it's gonna be continuous, and as government goes, things just get harder and the rules get tighter. And so we're gonna have to abide by whatever DEQ throws at us. So it's gonna be a continuous thing. The area that was worked on the most, we have a stretch between 16th Street and where the North Fork and the Middle Fork come together, which is just north of our sewer lagoons. And that's where a lot of this is taking place because it's a big wide open area. Lucky Mute came in, cleared the banks, got rid of the invasive blackberries and a lot of the trees that were in there that shouldn't have been in there. And the plan is to get these shrubs and trees to take over those areas. And Lucky Mute comes in and they'll take care of spraying and to keep those areas to where we're not getting the blackberries. But we've been that's one of our biggest areas that is wide open. It didn't have a lot of trees in the first place. So we're filling in that area. There's going to be other areas that we're going to have to concentrate on in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll let you off the hook till next year on this one.
Sounds good. Thank you for your time.
All right, and that brings us to our first work session item this evening. We have a report from our Community and Economic Development Director, Suzanne Duffner. on a really interesting sounding program that we can participate in.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I am joined by Lindy Romero and Jason Mackey. They're joining us online. They're with Oregon Housing and Community Services. So I'm just going to do a brief little intro, and then I'll turn the time over to them to go through some slides that are in your packet. So this is a work session. There's no urgency to make a decision on whether or not to pursue this program. It's a housing funding program offered through the state. It's a new one that's come out. We stumbled upon this as city staff was working with Polk Community Development Corporation on the senior housing project that we've been exploring. And so as we're turning over all the rocks looking for funding sources, this program came up as a potential opportunity. So I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, I hope, about it, so you can learn more about how it works and whether or not you think it's appropriate for the city to pursue further. So that's really kind of the direction. We're taking a little litmus test tonight. Should we explore it further? There's questions that we can't answer. We can always research that and come back to you at a future date. So hopefully that'll set the stage. And then just I mentioned in the cover memo how this is consistent with your strategic goals to look at affordable housing and working in partnerships. So we're kind of hitting on all those things. And I should say that if the city did join this program, it wouldn't be just a one and done necessarily or we'd have to use it on a senior housing. It could be for other housing projects as well. So hopefully that'll become more clear as we go through this. So I would like to mention as well, joining us in the audience, we have Kimberly Lyle and Mariana Crawford with Polk Community Development Corporation. So they've been great partners with us as we've kind of gone through the senior housing speaker series this last fall. It came to a great point on November 15th when we did a workshop over there at the Senior Community Center. So we appreciate their support as we continue to explore this exciting project. So with that, hopefully I think we've had a chance to get the technology. We'll have Lindy and Jason take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, Suzanne. Very happy to be here with y'all tonight. I'm gonna send a request to share my screen, and then I'll be able to get through our slides for today. But my goal is to get through the Moderate Income Revolving Loan or MRRL overview, and then I'll still be here to answer any questions as they relate to the technical aspects and the nuances. I expect lots of questions tonight. I'm very happy to answer those, and absolutely more than happy for OHCS to come in for the additional questions past this work session as well. Our goal is to really be partners in standing up this program and or helping cities and counties stand up this program. So I'm going to get this shared and not take up too much of our time introducing. Perfect. Can we all see the presentation? I think I saw a head nod. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to be discussing the Moderate Income Revolving Loan Program, or the MRRL program. And what MRRL is that it's a revolving loan fund for cities and counties to boost housing production for moderate income Oregonians at or below 120% AMI. There's two really important call outs from this slide. The first one is going to be that it's for cities and counties to boost housing production. OHCS really comes in as the loan issuer for this program, and it's up to cities and counties to stand up this program, just as Suzanne mentioned, and they're in the driver's seat for making sure that this program really meets the needs of the community and what y'all need for your own housing production. And that's where we get into the second piece. The second really important piece of this slide is the Oregonians at or below 120% AMI. This program and this funding source is really aimed to help those folks at the 80 to 120% AMI level to really tackle and be able to access affordable housing. And the program can look like a cap at 100% AMI if that's what your community needs, or even decreasing that to, like I said, the 80% AMI level. There is so much flexibility within the MRRL program as intended by Senate Bill 1537, where this was established for cities and counties to tailor this to your needs. And you'll hear me say that a lot throughout this presentation, that it is so very, very flexible to meet the needs of the individual communities that this would serve. And then as we talk about how much funding has been allocated for this program, is we were allocated $75 million for the general fund from the general fund. And then we have $50 million that's available in our first biennium, so February 25 through 2027. And out of that initial $50 million allocation, we have a 20% or $10 million set aside for rural jurisdictions to make sure that they kind of get their piece of the dollars as well. And that won't be in any jeopardy of going into the larger fund at all until 2 years. So once we get that additional 25 million, if that $10 million isn't spent, it could potentially go into the larger fund for other folks to access. But I will say our first 2 sponsoring jurisdictions are rural jurisdictions. So I'm very excited at the very real possibility that that money is going to be well spent. So very big picture is that MRL is intended to fill a gap in funding to ensure the projects are feasible and at an affordable rate. And for cities and counties to harness this funding stream by setting up that local MRL program. So sponsoring jurisdictions is how we identify cities and counties that stand up this MRL program. And it can be either or. We've had Tillamook County that has set up their MRL program, whereas Coos Bay City is just at the final stages of signing their master agreement with us to be stood up as a MRL program as well. So we're seeing both categories right now with our first 2 sponsoring jurisdictions, which is very exciting. So for a very kind of simplified overview of how MRL works and kind of getting into our key players is I'm going to get into some context for this slide first, and then we're going to go through the actual content. But in order to set up a MRL program, the first step is passing an ordinance. Some groundwork may be needed before you pass that ordinance to establish your MRL program, some community conversations, things like that, because this is a TIF model. So it's a tax increment financing model. So the property or project would forego their taxes on improvement and pay a program fee in lieu of those taxes on improvements. And to get that stood up, you need 3 critical components in your ordinance. You need local site approval, a definition of utility allowance, and a compliance plan. Those are the big 3 items that we look for in an ordinance to make sure that it hits our required points. But again, just to be really emphasizing that point that as a sponsoring jurisdiction, you can tailor your ordinance to be what your community needs. Tillamook County added that nonprofit developers or project applicants would be able to have a 12-year loan, whereas their other developers would have a 10-year loan. And then we've had some other sponsoring jurisdictions that are currently in process of working through their ordinance and what that looks like, potentially extending affordability periods, because this program and with the funding source, this does have an affordability period of 10 years or the life of the loan, whichever one is longer. So just some context before we get into how the program actually works. So once that ordinance is passed and you have signed a master agreement with OHCS, given Monmouth is a county, we will also need an IGA with your county as well, just to make sure that we have our county tax assessor role encompassed. And we'll get into what that looks like in the next slide here in just a second. And once those master agreements are signed, sealed, delivered, that's when you have your program stood up. And from there, the sponsoring jurisdiction will process project applications, and we have our minimum requirements as to what a project application would need to entail, not only in our program manual, but on our website as well for easy access. A sponsoring jurisdiction can add additional information or additional requirements to those project applications if you'd like, but you can adopt the minimum requirements that we've set forth. Once the sponsoring jurisdiction looks over those documents, the application materials, says that they'd like to provisionally approve it, then they'll submit to OHCS for a completeness review. So we're just making sure that ducks are in a row and we're good to go. And once we're able to get all of the provisionally approved aspects and completeness checks done, then we issue a no interest loan to the sponsoring jurisdiction, which is then issued as a grant to the developer. And I know I just said loan and grant in the same sentence. So how that breaks down is that the loan to the sponsoring jurisdiction also comes with a 6% admin fee, which is why it's encompassed a little different. And I have a visual because I'm a visual person later in our slide. So sponsoring jurisdiction gets a 6% admin cost per project that is also parsed apart as 5% to the sponsoring jurisdiction and 1% to the county tax assessor to make sure that we're accounting for the roles that are really important for this program. So then that grant amount is just issued to your developer. They're able to make that development come to life. And the county tax assessor role, just one part of it, is that they're exempting the property from the taxes on improvements and then making sure that the program fee is remitted to OHCS. And then we're able to recycle our funds on our end to make sure that we can get as many affordable housing projects stood up as possible. Okay, and I kind of went over some key partners in Merle Success already, but we have our sponsoring jurisdictions, which are absolutely pivotal. We have our cities and counties that are in the driver's seat for standing up this program. And then we have our project applicant or developer. They're bringing the projects to the sponsoring jurisdiction for processing. We have our county tax assessor and our fee payer. And a question that we get a lot is, why is the fee payer different than the developer? In the instances of home ownership, because this is a program fee that's paid in lieu of taxes on improvements and payment doesn't start until certification of completion or certification of occupancy, that fee payer then becomes the homeowner in the instances of home ownership programs. So something to keep in mind as you're approving projects as well. Our eligible costs under Merle cover infrastructure, pre-development, construction costs, land write-downs, and with infrastructure and pre-development, land acquisition and paying for system development charges are included in that as well. That's a question that we get quite a bit as well. And one thing that I want to highlight is that costs are eligible for reimbursement if incurred with 12 months before that local site approval happens and that project application is approved. So there's that reimbursement aspect that was allowed in the legislation as well. Losing my mouse over here. There we go. We have our project eligibility. So Merle is eligible for homeownership and rental housing, and it's to convert to construct new housing or convert buildings from non-residential to residential. And the aim is that both of these development types go to residents or homeowners that are at the AMI level that is set by the sponsoring jurisdiction and rented to folks that fit that population. So you have an income verification criteria that you'll want to check, and then making sure that you have the prices set specifically or especially for home ownership, and then your rental prices, making sure that they're set at the appropriate AMI levels. Now this slide is really wordy, and I've kind of already gone through the differentiation between the grant amount versus the loan amount. So this is a little redundant as well. But one thing that I want to highlight is that for project funding, this is to fill the gap that is identified in Performas. And we have our Performas for both rental and homeownership on our websites that folks can use for this application process. So developers primarily should fill out this Performa as part of their project application materials. And with that calculation of the gap, that's what they would be eligible for under the Merle program, with the caveat that there is a grant cap or a max grant amount under the program, and it's the estimated annual increase in property taxes multiplied by the life of the loan. So if that's 10 years or up to 15 years, that's how you calculate the max grant that they would be eligible for. If for any reason the project applicant has a larger gap than their max grant amount or their grant cap, they would be eligible for the grant cap, and then they would have to look for some additional funding to fill in the rest of that gap. And finally, just reiterating that loan amount versus the grant amount is that the grant funds are encompassed in the loan amount with that 6% admin cost. So just a visual for that loan, you have your MURL grant, and then encompass your 5% admin to the sponsoring jurisdiction, and then the 1% to the county tax assessor. And then I've talked about the program fee that's paid in lieu of those taxes on improvements. So folks are paying those base property taxes, but instead of the property taxes on improvement, they're paying the program fee, which is encompassed of the grant amount that's divided by the loan term, making sure that they're paying that 6% admin fee cost back as well, in addition to a 3% inflationary factor that's included in that, in order to make sure that the program fee is keeping up with what would be the increase of the property taxes on improvements, to make sure that come year 11, come year 16, based on the amortization schedule, there's not a surprise in how much they would be owing, or a very shocking surprise in how much they would be owing in their property taxes overall. So just to make sure that that works well for folks. In addition to this program fee, the only taxes that remain whole for the taxes on improvements that are foregone are the fire district fees. There was a specific set aside or language within the legislation that kept the fire district fees whole. Other than that, all other taxing districts are foregone those for the program fee and the property taxes on improvements. So there's a lot of information, but next steps following all of that would be passing that originating ordinance with the 3 critical components of local site approval, your utility allowance calculation, and your compliance plan. And then you'll develop that project application process, whether that's accepting the minimum requirements as OHCS has established. And then following all of that, that's when you're submitting your master agreement request to OHCS, which is on our website via a smart sheet. Once you fill out that smart sheet, that kickstarts our process for getting all of that together. One additional thing that I want to call out, I'm actually going to skip this slide. But looking ahead to Senate Bill 48, in this most recent legislative session, there was a technical fix bill to the MURL program, which allows cities and counties to make loans in addition to grants to developers, and offers alternative methods to the property tax or TIF model. And we've seen that that is appealing to a lot of jurisdictions to implement with Senate Bill 48 as well, to not forego the taxes for the other districts, and just have a more flexible way to pay back the loan. That's some feedback that we've gotten as it relates to Senate Bill 48. And we do anticipate having that live early 2026 for folks to adopt. By no means does that mean you can't adopt MURL as it stands now. And we're working on transition plans for folks who do adopt now to transition to encompass Senate Bill 48's allowances. So I anticipate Tillamook and potentially Coos Bay will want those transitions, so they'll be potentially the first to transition that, and be great to chat with too. Okay, Suzanne, I will turn it back to you to kind of facilitate questions, and I'm here to support and answer those nuances.
Great, thank you so much, Lindy. So yeah, a lot of information, very technical, more acronyms, but if you think of how I kind of wrap my head around it is, we're familiar with urban renewal and how that works as tax increment financing. So, I mean, there's some nuances in how those are different, but the model of tax increment financing is very similar. So, yeah, I think for now, if we can just maybe open up for some questions to clarify if things didn't make sense, or you had questions about more specifics of the program. I will say one of the concerns that we have is in talking with Rochelle just briefly about this program is just how much additional staff time and capacity will be needed to administer it. It's not kind of a one and done. There is some time there. And so we're exploring, and Mariana has already reached out to Commissioner Jeremy Gordon in Polk County about, is there kind of like Tillamook County, might there be some economies in scale, I think, of how we administer this in Polk County, because I think Independence is interested potentially in this program as well. So we will continue to see if the council is interested in us exploring this further, if that might be a possible model that we could use to help streamline and kind of spread out some of those admin time and costs. But yeah, definitely, I think the reason we initially didn't jump on board is just some of the concerns I think we have as local governments about loss of general fund and taxes is a real, concern. So just balancing that with this need for affordable housing and how do we jumpstart some of the housing projects that have significant, or they have gaps and they need help to get over the point where the projects make sense, especially for affordable housing projects that don't have that big of a margin as like market rate housing. So yeah, so stop talking and see what questions you have.
Carol McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I kind of thought you're much smarter at this than I am, but I thought the 6% administration fee would be part of the funds that would be used to help a city take care of the project. Is the money not big enough to provide that extra staff support?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is I'm not sure. I think we have to explore a little bit more as staff and maybe talk to some of our partner or the other jurisdictions that are already joining up, like Tillamook and Coos Bay, to see and dive down into a little bit more of the details of the paperwork that's involved. And so I think some of it will depend on how many of these we do. Like if we just did one housing project with it, then it's not as overwhelming. But if we were using that tool on multiple properties throughout the city, then of course, there'll be more administration and keeping track of that goes with that. I do like the flexibility of the program that, we get to decide for each one. It's not like a opt-in and that we're required to use it. It's just a tool if you think of it in the toolbox. So but directly to your question of whether the 6% will cover it, I think maybe Lindy, if you could clarify that, I think 1% of that does go towards the county tax assessor because they're also having to do some additional paperwork and some record keeping. And so it would be the 5%. But yeah, being new, it's hard to know, right? We don't have we kind of usually look at past applications, but we could, maybe look at a similar, like if there's something in an urban renewal project or something. So it's a question that we'd have to, I think, do a little bit more research before we could answer that more concretely.
Follow up, Councilor McKeel and then Councilor Lopez.
It looks like a clever system of getting an infusion of cash that lets you take care of the housing needs. I like that it has home ownership and rental. Do we have to pick one or the other, or can we do like 50-50 or whatever we have? I know there's an assessment study that does the beginning, but it's nice. Often when I see these, it's like we'll have a lot of rentals, but it's really nice, the idea to have home ownership as part of this as well.
Absolutely. That's a great comment. I believe we get the flexibility to choose, but okay, I see a head nodding from Lindy. So is there any stipulation on breakdown of certain percentage that we can use under each owner or rental, or is it we able to decide project by project basis?
Absolutely. The beauty of this program is it's absolutely up to the sponsoring jurisdiction how they'd like to see homeownership and rental opportunities happen under this program. I will say that there is a minimum for any mixed use projects that 10% or at least 10 units do have to be affordable, but that's the only limitation that we have on our end. Very, very flexible, this program. Mm-hmm.
Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much for the wonderful presentation, Lindy and Suzanne. Couple questions and a couple comments. So first, you mentioned that this program has a cap, right? And that cap is dictated by 10 to 15 years of tax increment financing. Is that correct? 10 to 15 years?
10 to 15 years, yes, of the loan term.
Okay, okay. And so that, that is one deviation from how I think about urban renewal financing, right? That's a much longer time frame. And
Mhm.
also the pulling out of the, pulling the fire districts out of, that tax increment. I think that does a couple things. It, mitigates the impact to services, but it also shrinks that amount available to us, right? Um, and so I think that then that prompts, well, how flexible are these funds in terms of marrying them with other funding sources? You mentioned, looking for other funding. I think when we talk about that, oftentimes we think about, private capital or what have you, but could we pair this with other state programs or other, other grant style programs that we could marry these funds with?
Definitely, and that's a great question. Another one that we get a lot. And Suzanne, I'm sorry if I cut you off. If you want to jump in there first.
No, you're good. Take it away.
Beautiful. Okay. Tillamook actually does have a project that they plan to layer with our LIFT funding. So we are absolutely at the table to have those discussions, work through initial performas with folks to see how that capital stack works out, to work through barriers as best we can and make sure that the dollars get out the door and the projects get funded.
All right, all right. And then my next question is just to reconfirm, when I go down that checklist, the first step is to just engage as a city to open the door to this, but it doesn't commit us to anything. Is that correct?
Correct. By passing an ordinance and kind of standing up the Merle program, at no point are you required to run a project through, pass an application at all.
Okay. Well, from my lens, this seems like it is additive to what we're already doing and wouldn't commit us to where if we hit some of those roadblocks like staffing or like other things, it seems that we would be able to, easily reverse course if needed. So this is great. I also want to thank you, or I believe it was one of your fellows that was working on the Merle program for presenting at LOC. So it's helpful that this isn't the first time that some of us see this. It's an innovative tool, and the newness I think gives me a little pause, but I'm excited to see where it can take us. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was probably my program manager, Megan Ellertson. She's also amazing. And I can't emphasize enough that we really are here to be supports. As folks are standing up this program, we have several different ways for folks to get in contact with us and meet with us one-on-one to have those conversations.
Great. Councillor Belts?
Thank you so much for this information. I also saw it at LOC, and so some more questions came up, and maybe these have been answered, and maybe it's just because I don't understand the process. But I have two questions. One, under program interview where it says a simple flow, number 5, it says county tax assessor exempts the property from taxes on improvements. So is that forever, or is that a reset at sale? How does that work?
That's a fantastic question. Also happy to jump in here, Suzanne.
Yep, go ahead for it.
Perfect. County tax assessor is only exempting the property for the affordability period and the life of the loan. So the project will only be tax exempt if the loan term is capped at 10 years for 10 years and will remain affordable for that period.
Thank you. That makes sense. Second question, this may be way too in the weeds, but I've been spending a lot of time talking with developers about why we don't have developers building condominiums, which are basically entry-level affordable housing, or why aren't developers reconfiguring apartment buildings into condominiums? Would any of these monies be available if a developer chose to do that?
That is a fantastic question. And I do want to take that one back to the team because the legislation seems specific that it's for conversion of non-residential to residential, but I don't want to give a hard no. I would love to take that one back to the team and see if we can open that as an opportunity as well.
Great, thanks. Others? Councillor Carey.
One of the things that I'm trying to figure out is the order of magnitude. I suppose we could do it anywhere from, like one project. We talked about senior housing, some options for that. Or we could go with 120 unit apartment complex, as well as a housing development. I mean, we could take this as far as we wished, I think. But I don't know, I don't have any idea. I mean, I can't do I don't know what the pro forma looks like. I don't know what our maximum amount would be here. And it would be by project, I assume.
Yeah, great questions, Counselor Carey. And I'm going to check, I guess, with Lindy. Is it subject, I assume, to the availability of the program funds? I mean, they only have, the 75 million. And so once it's been revolved out, we'll have to wait till it gets paid back. But I do recall understanding that there's like a limit on, that they use a formula for the amount of the grant or loan that can be made. Do you have a sense, Lindy, like what sort of some of the examples that you've kind of run on this model, like what the average range of those project awards might be, or is that it's too difficult of a question to answer, I guess, at this point?
It's a great question, Suzanne, and one we do get very often. And the tricky part is that because of the flexibility under the MIRL program and how many different projects that you could see come through under MIRL, it's really hard to ballpark any kind of numbers for project funding. We do have a couple example performas that we put together just to demonstrate how the performa works and how the gap is identified. And then in our program loan request, then how the max grant amount or the grant cap is then calculated. Which the county tax assessor will need to come in and plug in some tax codes for that as well. But that's how we can come in and help with, if you have some preliminary project numbers, you have a developer that could be ready to put in a sample performa for us to brainstorm about, we can kind of ballpark what that would look like for the gap funding and the max grant amount that could be awarded, obviously with no provisionally approval having happened yet, the completeness check still needing to happen, those kind of elements.
It strikes me, pardon me, but that at some point we'd need to have an idea on how we wanted to use this. I mean, be it a cottage cluster for seniors, be it the expansion thing of the senior center, senior housing above, a small modest development of affordable ownership homes where people could begin to build their equity. And then, because that would be important to find out what is available, that we might be able to engage a developer with, that would allow us to make some informed calculations about whether that 5% is going to be able to cover any of the additional work that's required. I think the more you get and understand 5% times more is more, but it may not be enough for the whole, for the whole person. My sense is that we're at a point where, and I'm a little bit like Councilor Lopez, this is pretty interesting. There's a lot of details I still don't understand, but there is research that can be done. And we could begin to pursue this to see whether or not, the details are going to actually work.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Just a comment back to that. I think what I was hearing you say it sounded like almost developing some local guidance or criteria that we might want to use to define which projects we would potentially support. And I'd be happy to kind of give some examples of projects that I've talked to developers or pieces of property that, may be interested in this. I will say, just back to your comment or question about order of magnitude, we have some developers that we just don't even want to touch any additional strings on money in terms of income levels and qualifications. So, my sense is that if we open it up, it's not going to be like a big, huge rush on it, but I hope I was wrong. I wish I was wrong. So I think, I would offer that, we could look at maybe some examples and see if we want to put some sideboards on that, since there is a tax implication or impact on the city's budget that we want to take into consideration and make it really high value affordable housing projects that we're really, trying to support as much as possible. So thank you for that kind of comment about thinking about how we use this strategically as a tool.
And to be clear, the tax on improvements is that incremental tax increase like we use in urban renewal.
That's what's used to pay back the
Right.
grant or loan.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And so we're not going to lose any of the tax base, as it were.
That's my understanding. Is that your understanding, Lindy, that it's, frozen based on today, and it's just the increment of the new improvements being constructed?
However, you go bare land to, 1,800 square feet, you've got a significant amount. And then finally, and then I'll be done, but the only limitation on the construction and on the build and on the project would be that it's affordable for the time period that we're allowing, that we're forgiving the taxes. I mean, it would need to meet our codes, but that's all. There are no additional layers that are provided by the program on the type of construction.
I'll let Lindy jump in on that one. Did you
No,
get
that's
that question?
accurate. It's eligible for those home ownership aspects just to construct the new housing or converting from non-residential to residential use for single family or multifamily as it relates to home ownership. And then for rental housing, again, constructing the new units or conversion from non-residential.
And that is as defined as it gets. So there's no, because Suzanne, you were talking about, well, you don't want, the developers don't want to have an extra deal, well, you got to have a solar panel or, whatever it might be, that it's just as she described. It's in plain language. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And sorry, I did have one more. You raised really good thoughts in my head about kind of the low risk barrier of at least getting signed up for the program. And then we can kind of decide if we want the off ramp or on ramp to pursue the funds further. The funding is like a first come first serve basis, as I understand it. So if we haven't gone through the ordinance, that's going to take us, like a month potentially to pass that, then we're kind of behind the eight ball in terms of the timeline. And the other benefit when we get past the ordinance is that we can apply for some technical assistance funds to help us with a little bit of the capacity building. So yes, thank you for picking up on the low barrier to at least passing the ordinance. Mm-hmm.
Councilor Lopez, you had a follow-up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much, Councilor Carey, for your insightful questions. It prompted a couple of additional questions of my own. The rules around putting conditions around affordability of the project, specifically the timeline. You set minimums. If the city or the developer wanted to place additional rules regarding, the affordability, ensuring longer affordability of the, site, other things that set, you set that low barrier, can we set a slightly higher barrier if we decided to as a community?
If you'd like to extend the affordability period, absolutely on the table. It's something that we've heard from a couple other sponsoring jurisdictions and makes me really excited about the idea of having that affordability reach more folks under this program.
Yeah, because 10 years is a long time, feels like a long time when we're talking about some of these things, but in the broad scheme of things, especially when we're talking about development, right? We often lean into 25, 30-year timetables. And so 10 years feels a little short in terms of ensuring affordability of new builds. So thank you.
Councilor Oberst, and when we're talking about scope, reminder, only 10 million is set aside for rural. So even if there was a huge rush of projects and Monmouth were the only city going out, we still are not talking about a giant amount of money. And after the presentation of Lead Boring Cities, I'm going to guess Lindy and Jason are having these talks around the state. So I think scope is very manageable. Go ahead, Councilor Ober.
So following off Chris's question, I have my concerns around the affordability timeframe as well. I heard a story several years ago where in Multnomah County, hundreds of units were suddenly coming off of the affordability list, and after 30 years, and people were on the streets because the rents for these units went through the roof because they were no longer constrained by affordability rules. So walking into this eyes open, we could be setting up a situation where, let's say we go 15 years and then we extend it and we say, no, we want it to be 25. And 25 years from now, we've got people in Monmouth on the streets because their affordable unit is no longer affordable. And it is to be approached with caution because of, if nothing else, that factor of having developers promise to build an affordable unit for a certain period of time, and then knowing that that time period will come to an end and the people living in them may be unable to afford the new rent. So I just want to urge council, and if you all have an answer to that concern, I'd love to hear it. But I would really hate the idea of what, and obviously we won't be on the scale of Multnomah County, but they were literally hundreds of units in a year that people were unable to afford their homes. So thanks.
All right, we have a comment and we'll entertain our partner here with some ideas about that. Councilor Oberst, if you can turn off your mic so we.
Oh, sorry, thanks.
And I hope Lindy supports this and or at least confirms. This is supposed to be a gap program, so as a result, there will be other affordability layered on. And so the largest affordability right now in the state of Oregon for rental properties is 60 years. So it's a pretty long period, and usually that gets extended with other forms of funding.
I will caveat that if for any reason the project is not stacked with other affordable housing grants that do have affordability maximums, caps, that will need to be something that is watched. And we've talked about that a little internally as to what that looks like. And we can't necessarily set parameters, since OHCS again just comes in as a loan issuer to help sponsoring jurisdictions set up these programs. But it may be something that you would like to include in your originating ordinance, or even the project specific ordinance as you start to approve those projects down the line. What does it look like for these units or these developments to come off of affordability? Is there a ramp up? Things to explore there as well.
And again, those are great things. We don't have to decide at all until we start talking about specific projects. So what I want to do is just get sort of a feel for this so we can know whether or not to invest the staff time to get some of these questions answered. One thing I do want to kind of separate out, Suzanne mentioned, do we do a little bit of pre-work to find out if this is going to be better seated as a Polk County project, or do we want to forge ahead as Monmouth? So I thought I heard you mention that, Suzanne. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I haven't talked directly to Commissioner Gordon yet, but that is on my radar. So I will do that as soon as possible, and that way we can get a decision one way or another if they're not interested.
I just want to get a sense if we have a real strong feeling about that one way or the other. So who would like to really explore the Polk County collective option before we just over us? How many folks are more interested in considering it as if it's part of a Polk County program? They would be the jurisdiction, and they would be applying for these things as projects come in for all the cities probably and the county. We'd all be competing for that pot.
I would only be interested in a Polk County program if it was determined that we were not able to sustain the staff time required to administer the program.
All right, so it sounds like what we want to do is do more exploration in Monmouth alone. So don't spend your time chatting with our neighbors. Let's pursue what the process would be, what the options are, the cost, pursuing it ourselves.
Okay, for administering our own. And then, I mean, we will have to partner with the county assessor, of course, but yeah. So I got it. I'll explore that further with our internal staff.
Yeah, not considering
Yeah.
them the SJ, right? The jurisdiction.
Yes.
Us.
Madam Mayor, just to clarify my previous statement, I make that statement only because of the timeframes involved, not because I don't want to work with the county or other partners. We love our neighbors. As it came out of my mouth, it sounded a little harsh, only because of the timeframes that are currently involved.
Well, one of the frustrations that I have with working with the county is the housing rehabilitation stuff. That's a county program, and it's hard for us to get our toehold into that. At least it seems to me. The city of Monmouth to get their toehold in that, because we're competing with Dallas and we're
Right.
Falls
Give us
City.
more local control of the program. If we had our-
So it's not a gripe about it. It's just, to me, it's just a fact that it's hard to get traction.
Other questions you need us to guide you on this evening?
No, I think my next step will be just explore that staffing capacity, check that out with finance and with our city manager. And then if you're comfortable with that, we would come back kind of with a draft ordinance and we could talk about it some more. And unless you feel like we need another work session to
You're seeing all the heads.
heads on for the ordinance. So yay,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
that's what we'll do.
Yes, yes.
January. Green light. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks, Lindy and Jason. And thank you to our Polk CDC partners for coming along as well. Yep, we love finding new money sources and ways to really make these things available and meet our goals. Thanks. All right, that does bring us to the exciting rate water study information, but I am trying to decide if we can take a 5-minute break before we start. All right, 8:15, so we're going 8:20, folks. Thank you. John's going to put the timer on. We're gonna have to keep our tech support later, Phyllis.
If you'd like, I can kind of get started with a little introduction, and hopefully this presentation will come up and we'll have a successful conversation.
We will have Russ Cooper give us a little introduction about our next item while we work on the tech. And if we don't get it in a couple of minutes, we'll just have to go the old-fashioned way without the.
I think we're getting real close to the old-fashioned way already. Yeah, we're working that way. So tonight we're here bringing a water rate model, kind of bringing in very early in the process to get some feedback from you. What staff is looking at is proposing some changes to our rate model. And so we want to have some feedback, some dialogue before we cut the consultant loose on actually developing the full model and the report. And who I have with me tonight is Tim Tice from the Oregon Association of Water Utilities. City Manager Roden, when I mentioned looking at doing a new rate study, she recommended I reach out to Tim. He had done her previous appointments rate study, and she was pretty excited and satisfied with the work. So tonight, with the rate model, staff's goal in this rate model is that we implement a rate model that covers the full cost of service. That's what we're looking to do, implement a rate model that encourages conservation, water conservation. Another goal of ours is to implement a rate model that provides better rate equity across our various meter classes. And then looking to implement a rate model that collects sufficient funds and revenue to cover all planned capital improvements. So those are kind of our overarching goals in looking at this rate model. I spoke about proposing some changes to the city's current rate model. Tim will go into this in more detail, but right now we have 6 or 7 rate classes single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, institutional, rural, irrigation. And so we're going to propose that we simplify that down to just a residential, commercial, and then an outside or irrigation meter class. So the outside brings in everybody that's outside the city limits. We have I shouldn't say a number, we have some water users that are.
Where is my share screen?
It's a very good question.
Because
Are we good with them?
with some Zoom issues and updates on this. So apologies for that. We're just looking for a way for him to share his screen. So you said you gave him the abilities to do that? We are having trouble finding it on our end, on where it is on this side.
So back to the primary proposed changes that we're bringing is the simplifying the number of meter classes. There's an industry standard that our base monthly fee, meter fee, should cover upwards of 50% of our annual budget. Right now, we're down at about 30%. And so Tim is recommending that we adjust our base meter rate up to something that's closer to 50%. We're also looking at implementing a tiered consumption rate model. And what that is that as you use more water at some set amount, the rate that you pay for every gallon after that goes up. Once you get to the next one, it goes up from there. So we're looking at implementing a 3-tiered consumption model. That's the conservation component that we're looking at. And then we're also looking at implementing a slightly higher base rate for our commercial and outside water users. And Tim will cover that a little bit more as well as he goes through his presentation. At the end of this, kind of what we're trying to get as far as feedback from you is, does council support these changes in a rate model? How quickly how comfortable are you, or how quickly do you want to bring up that base rate up to the 50%? We're looking at one option would be doing that over 2 years. And even at that, it still wouldn't get up to 50%, but it would certainly be much closer. One of the I think things to keep in mind is that as the base rate increases, the unit rate or the consumption rate, that number will go down a little bit also. So when you raise the one, you can bring the other one down because you're trying to get a balanced amount to cover your budget. And then the last thing that we're going to be looking to get some feedback from you on is when we look at capital reserves and setting aside money for future capital projects, or the amount of the rate that is allocated for capital, sometimes it's common to look at just 3 to 5 years in this rate model. What capital projects do you have, and base your rate off of those 3 to 5 years of capital projects. The other one that we're looking at is, and I bring this up when I look at Monmouth's situation. One is to look at your 20-year master plan and average it over the 20 years. So you have a much more linear approach to collecting revenue for your capital projects. You're going to you may build more reserve early on, but that's because you've got some higher cost projects out in the future that you want to bring your reserves up to help buy down the amount that you have to actually finance, or maybe you can actually cover those projects out in the future. And I am running.
Well, and yeah, I'm gonna say, we have what looks like the slides here, and there's a lot of material and it's a lot of numbers and in depth. I was hoping we weren't gonna get that much detail tonight anyway, so maybe more of a general overview is better of this.
How comfortable are you with just giving a kind of a?
Get a copy of one of those.
Yeah, you're correct.
I'll run off that. Fine with this.
And they flip this way. Yeah, you're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, we have copies of all of that, but trying to keep this, like you say, more of high level right at this point, to give some more direction and guidance if we can, would be good. Hi.
Madam Mayor, council members, sorry for the delay. I am Tim Tice. I am with Oregon Association of Water Utilities. Couple of the things that we need to really put down on one slide too is the foundational data. Okay, this comes directly from Russ. These are a 3-year. The top 3 bullets are a 3-year in the rear of averages. 401 million gallons of water produced out of the ground, 359 million gallons sold. Okay. The reason why we use a 3-year time frame is we have to have that foundation. If Russ tells me he is selling 359 million gallons, I have to anticipate future revenues for that 300. It's happened with us before. Somebody says, well, we sell 400 million gallons every year. Oh, great. The following year, their revenues are down. They're looking at us, that's a mistake was made, and they only sold like 360 million. So we just have to have some foundational numbers to go off of. On the financial side, on slide 2, the budget is actually 3.6 million and not 4.02. This is version 1.0. The new data is version 2.9. And that's how many times Russ and I have gone back and forth looking at this kind of stuff. We bring up a total number of connections are almost 3,000, and 85% of those are your single family residentials. We focus on that group because that's the largest group that we serve, and that will be the impact when these rates are adjusted. Okay. Something that's very, very kudos to Public Works here is your delivery rate is less than a penny a gallon. And I highly recommend getting a gallon jug of water, setting it on City Hall and saying a penny a gallon delivered to your tap. That's pretty darn impressive it's one of the lower ones in the state of Oregon. Okay. And then typically some other information, we talk about a unit of water. A unit of water for the city here is 748 gallons, and that converts to a $6.77. That's your delivery cost for a unit of water. So you can deliver 748 gallons of water for $6.77. That's pretty amazing. The other fact we want to bring in is the average single family home uses about 7,000 gallons a month. Okay. Now I say that because that is a year-long average. Okay. They may use 4,000 in the wintertime and they may use 14,000 in the summertime. Why do I bring that up? Because if you wish to take our recommendations and run with it, sometimes that will get into the higher tiers, and the 14,000 gallons will be a little bit higher of a monthly rate. Okay. On page 3 is simply your budget. This is how we break down the budget. A couple things I want to relate to you. That second item, capital reserves. We look at a cash flow forecast. Okay. And 2 primary things we look at: cash flow forecast and delivery rate. And we want to make sure that the city, in every aspect, from the person who's using 1,000 gallons to someone who's using 250,000 gallons per month, per billing cycle, is being treated in a fair and equitable way. Okay. The 925,000 for capital reserves, Russ and I, this was just 3 days ago or last Thursday, I think, decided to go with this number because that is a 20-year number from your water master plan from your engineering firm. Okay. That number is actually a little bit less than the 3 and 5 year time frame, which is 1.4 million. These are necessary capital improvement planning required over the next 3 or 5 years. We brought in the 925 to kind of give you a much broader picture, and we've come to the consideration that it's not wow. Thank you so much. You want that back? I'll use this as well. Oh, I gotta move forward, don't I? Are we there? No, one more. Okay. The reason why we're sharing the 925 is it helped adjust the budget so our rates were the new recommended rates wouldn't be so high. The next 3 to 5 years is a 1.4 million, like I said earlier. The 925 is a 20-year timeline, but I don't think it's fair for us to ask you to make a decision beyond the 3 or 4 or 5 years. Okay. So this is the foundational information we take to determine the rate. Okay. The key.
The 925 is a 20-year, but it's in the 26 budget. That's a lot of money in there if that's a 20-year project.
That is a 20-year average per year. Average per year. Yes, sir. Sorry. That's a good point. Cash flow forecasting is guiding us to say that 925 is what we're going to put into the budget in order to predict the revenues we're going to be required to keep the systems and mechanical integrity going and expansions and what have you. We're going to design these rates in order to be able to meet your capital improvement planning. Okay. We're looking at that cost associated with the future. So many times, probably the last 10 years, we're called in and what the decisions are having to be made is a reactionary. One of the things that I think the city's done exceptionally well is doing that 5.5% increments every single year. I mean, you're not going to come back to the citizens and say, we need another $22 a month on a base rate or something of that nature. So in that way, what we're trying to do is provide some answers for you to take or give you these answers so that you can make these decisions each and every year based on a set of data that we're going to be able to provide you. The information has been derived from your water master plan. So the current snapshot, do this. Your base rates are at 29.39%. The goal is 50. I heard Russ mention a little bit earlier, if you have a really, really high base rate, your consumption rates can be down or vice versa. Typically fixed expenses are covered by your service monthly fees. And then the consumption carries all the other variable expenses and what have you. Your total revenues for this budget year, if you stay on track, is only 77%. Now that is not indicative of what the city's done in the past. Okay, these rates could have been perfectly fine for 2 years ago, but with a budget that we set at 3.6 million, we're only going to come in at 77%. Okay. A 3/4 inch service, a typical single family residential home using 7,000 gallons will have a monthly fee of $58.46. Okay. Let's look at how that. No, let's look how that plays out with this slide. I've already covered the first three points. Your delivery rate is $6.77. That's for 100 cubic feet. If the council chooses to do nothing with the recommendations we bring to you, the minimum step to meet budget would go from $3.60 to $5.40, which begs the question, should any gallon of water or unit water be sold at a loss? If you make a widget for $1 and you sell it for 50 cents, how long will the widget company be in business? Is what I'm presenting as a business model, considering water as a business. Okay. I'm gonna want that way. That's the way I roll it, yeah. So here is a good example, and this is typical average. Your base rate is $25.02. Consumption rate is $33.48. Typical monthly bill for most users is $58.50. But your delivery rate to that same customer for that same amount of water is $62.96. So technically you're losing $4.46 a month. Let me show you on a bigger chart what that looks like. On this particular chart, what we're looking at is a base rate plus the consumption rate. The consumption charge at $3.60. The average of 9.3 units, $58.50. This chart shares with you meter size across the top, units down along the left side. If you're operating in the red or the green, and anything beyond 7 units, the city is losing money. Now you can see how that tapers down to the right in the red, but let's look at the bigger picture where we go all the way up to 250 units. Now, that begs the bigger question, how often does a 3/4 inch meter, either inside or outside the city limit boundaries, use that much water? But it still needs to be kind of answered in order to make sure that if you have one entity that might be using that much water and you're losing that much money, can that or should that be made up on from another entity? And these are the questions that we have to deal with when we look at these rates. I mentioned just a few minutes ago the $3.60. If you do nothing with the base rates, and you must include the $5.40 new unit rate, that's what that chart looks like. So we're moving in the right direction. We're showing less red. But what this chart basically tells you is a single tier model, and right now that's the concept, that's the format that the city currently has, is you charge $3.60 for every unit of water, regardless if you use 1,000 or 250,000 gallons. Okay, this chart shares with you that minimum step, but it also supports the idea that a multi-tier rate is necessary for you to sell every unit of water and either break even or make revenue. That single step that we're asking you to consider tonight, the 360 to the 540, we'll look at a comparison that looks like this. $58.46, a new rate would be $75.19. And this is where most people go, ooh, that's $20. I get that. But that's based on a single tiered structure. Okay, and that's based on $25.02 base rate for your single family residential. So if we're going to increase that base rate, and Russ said earlier when I was fooling around with this technology, the consumption rate can come down. Let's look to see how that kind of plays out. The first consideration by the council is your current base rate is $25.02. We'd like to see it at $33.53. Why is that? I came to Russ with my initial thought, and it's, Russ, you need to be about $38 to $40. He goes, it's not going to happen. Not on my watch. I can respect that. He said, can you get me under a $10 increase? And I said, then can we go a multiple year step base rate to get to that 50% of the budget covered by your monthly service fees? So we came up with 3353 for fiscal year next year. So April, May, be considering this for the July, and then possibly in 27, 28 to go to $38.53. That's our first ask of you on that. When we look at the single family residential users, that's going to set the tone for all the other larger size meters. Currently, the city implements the American Water Works Association standards for meter ratios. Meter ratios charge more money for a larger meter because the infrastructure cost to support that service line is greater. That's based on a 15-year timeline for the replacement components for that particular service line. It has nothing to do with system development charges. It's strictly infrastructure support. Okay, you folks are already doing that. That was implemented in the 2020 rate study. That made it look a lot easier. The only other thing we like to do is look at the inside-outside services and charge those outside services. The normal industry standards is about 1.2% more or 20% more. Why? You have much farther push, much more electricity, much more additional cost to get to the water outside the boundaries, okay? The people inside the city are paying taxes for all these services. You're not collecting any taxes for those things, okay? So I want to give you an example of what these new base rate only charges would be. The top table is what you're currently using. The bottom table is what we're recommending for the year 26-27. The highlighted numbers are your single family residential users. So let's get off of that branch and hop over to the other branch, and the other branch of this tree is consumption. This is where I have a tendency to go a little fast, so if you put a timeout sign in, and I'll be happy to stop. The top bullet, your delivery rate, is currently what you're doing. The next bullet is your existing rate. If I ask you to do the minimum increase, it's going to go to 540. And with a new increase adoption, we can get that unit cost to $4.50. $4.50. It's the fourth yellow bullet, or fourth yellow. So I'm asking for $33.53 on the base rate, and that drops that unit must charge at $4.50. So that leads us to another big question is, would you prefer to maintain a single tiered structure for all water purchased will be a set rate? And before you say yes or no, if you do that, a single tier rate starts at a much higher rate than a multi-tier rate, because we anticipate selling some water at that higher rate to compensate for the lower rate. Okay. It also puts a conservation mindset in the folks that they will conserve water if they know they're going to end up having to pay more for water. A couple of other things, as Russ is sharing with me, the distribution system, tightening that up, your unaccounted for water, and unaccounted for water is lost revenues. If it can't go past a meter and get tracked, where does that $6.77 go? We don't know. And as they tighten things up, and they're already at, what were you, 11%? Less than 10%. That's a handful of cities that can actually say that. So we can't really put too much more emphasis on fix more leaks, Russ, fix more leaks. So here is a chart I want to share with you. There's a lot going on in this chart. We talked about a multi-tier level. You will notice in the vertical columns in the center of the page, 3/4 inch in, out, inch and a half. They will have their own tiered structure. And those tier structures will start at 11,000 gallons for tier 2 and 25,000 gallons for tier 3. I'm sorry, 25 units for tier 3. You'll notice the 2, 3, 4, and 6 inch. their first tier goes all the way to 25 units. The reason that is large pipes consume a lot of water. That's why they're large pipes. And the larger users would get all the way into tier 3 almost immediately. So to make it a more fair practice and to align with average usages that these larger users are using, and I'm not talking about the anomalies that will have one apartment building using 180,000 gallons every single month. Okay, that's an anomaly. That's not the norm. I just wanted to give you an outline, and then I wanted to share with you that per unit, you can see $3.90, $5.80, $7.05. Did it come to anybody's attention that $3.90 is less than anything I've mentioned thus far? Because we anticipate the higher rates at $7.05. So it's a balancing act. The next page I want to share with you is the change in monthly water rates. The 3 yellow highlighted is what we're asking. Currently $25.02. The new change for next year is $33.53. And if so, you choose the following year, $38.53. You can see the numbers that are in a call out box and a diamond. The diamond are your first choice. If you don't want to do anything what I'm sitting here telling you, then you've got to go to 540 to meet budget. If you do move to 33.53 and choose a multi-tiered rate, it will start at $4.30 and move upward. And then, like Russ was saying, if you go to 2027 and go to 38.53, those unit rates can actually come down. The numbers at the very, very bottom, units per month, cost per month, operating in the red or green, only the 2 that we shared with you with the tiered structures will generate revenues in all aspects of water unit sales. One of the things that we provide during these studies is an annual adjustment. This first is asking the 33.53 for 26-27. We have a CPI in the middle column in blue of $1.42, $1.99. That's based on the consumer price index of water, wastewater utilities only. Only. We extract that inflationary index. The 4.23 that you see sitting on the top in blue, that has been the average inflationary index for water and sewer since 2020. Okay, all we did is project that all the way through 2031. I'm assuming it's going to go up and down, but Russ has the ability to go directly online, look at that CPI, next April come to you and say that CPI is 4.8 now. And you can it'll take the decision-making process right out of your hands. You can just track that. Or you can look at a 5-year timeline that takes the peaks and valleys out and kind of flattens it. In current, from 2020 to 2025, the flat line is 4.23%. The next slide I want to share with you is if you do vote yes in 26-27, you go to the 38.53 and what those relative base rate costs will be for your constituents. From $25 current to $39 in 2031, in a 6-year timeline, you're going to increase about $14. But a lot of that, like I said, is because this council has made the decision to incrementally increase the rates for the last 5 years. Another thing that we want to bring to your attention is long-term debt. We plug in USDA funding, Business Oregon funding into an amortization chart, and we break it down. If the city of Monmouth wanted to choose a $1 million loan at 2.25% for a 30-year term, your debt service would be $46,199. Great. If we break that down by connection, it's $1.30 a month per person. But if you break it down by the unit of water, it's only 10 cents. So the city goes after a loan, The following year, someone who's using 9.3 units of water would be charged an extra 89 to 90 cents on their monthly bill. That's pretty darn incredible as far as the efficiency in which the system is delivering water. It all comes down to that, and you know, so there's that aspect. To sum up everything, what we said, our findings in the future, your base rates, you've done good. You've met the standards. I don't see why we would want to change anything in that nature. From 29.29% to 41 to 47.5% in 2 years, it might be a big ask. I'm admitting from 30 to 47, that's a 17% increase, but it's really is across the board as far as all size of meters. We're not putting any additional burden on any one class, okay? On the consumption rates, it is your choice to stay with a single or a multi-tier. Multi-tier is going to create more fairness for everybody because the larger users will drive down the cost at the first tier, and the first tier supports the higher tiers going out. Conclusions. We chose a conservative side of the road with a $925,000 capital improvement plan instead of the 1.43. I guess Ruskin has magic with some numbers. I don't know. He can stretch 925,000 to make it look like 1.4. That is a 20-year average. We can extract that out. If we do, your budget's going to go up another 400,000. We don't think it's necessary right now. Okay. Your base rates do not meet the fixed operating expenses, not at 30%. They just simply don't. And we see this all the time. It's pretty typical with water and wastewater utilities. Okay. For so long, people are always only spending money for that reactionary maintenance. And what we're looking at is asking you to say, what's the forecast for the cash we're going to need for the next few years? We have it, the data, you know, the things that are oddball is time, money, supply chains. They can disrupt stuff really, really quick. A stick of pipe prior to COVID was $107. That same stick of pipe that they've got to put in the ground is over $300. And the prices are not coming down. Okay. We reformatted, and capital improvement was considered a variable cost. We're saying, no, it's a fixed rate. That's your cash flow. We've set these rates not based on what Independence is doing, not based on what Dallas is doing, or Portland, or Newburgh, or Amity, or anybody else. We have to look at the fingerprint of the city of Monmouth, and it's very, very unique. Right now, you have zero debt service or very low debt service. Okay, so somebody's been doing something right in the past. Kudos to them. So this is very, very, very specific on our structure for you. So the last slide here is just the questions. Single or two-step to get to 50% fixed rates. Single tier, multi-tier. And are you happy with us looking at a 20-year timeline? Are you happy with us only wanting to do a 3 or 4 year timeline? And are you going to be considering possible long-term loan rates to be able to fund additional larger projects? We're not talking about something that, you know, they need 2 new trucks and go out and spend $200,000. I'm talking, you know, $1 million projects that are in your future. So with that, turn it over to Russ or to you for any questions.
Yeah, so just as far as process, get some feedback from you tonight. You got kind of a snapshot of what the rates might be. Once we get the feedback, if you support the concepts of changing the rate model, I'll turn Tim loose to actually do the actual rate, do a report. We'll come back to you, share the findings based off of the new model. And you know, there's variables in there, but I just want to make sure that we get some feedback from you before we send him down the road doing a whole lot of work to only discover that
it's not the direction that the city wants to go.
And for everybody's information, the timing on this, of course, because we would have to build this into next year's budget. And so we do want to get this decided and get the additional information so that Russ can work with Amy to get that for the budget. So if we can do some limited questions, we are at the 9 o'clock hour, and I'm going to finish this up before we, unfortunately, if we decide if we're going to move forward with our urban renewal meeting. But so quick questions, Councilor Obert.
You mentioned $1 million loans. That doesn't cover a water treatment plant. Have we done any figuring about what it would cost if we have to build that at some percentage on ratepayer back?
The water treatment plant is not in our master plan, but looking at the longer distance, that's kind of why I'm recommending that now, so that as we get that built into it, we'll be building our reserves now instead of not including that.
Yeah, great question. Councilor Lopez?
I will do my best to be as brief as possible. Yes, and so with that, my questions are going to be a little bit more pointed than they normally were. They're said with love. What are our fixed costs in delivery currently? What percentage exactly? You've done a lot of work, it's great. But I want to know what our actual fixed costs are.
In a dollar amount, or what those?
Well, we have a dollar amount per unit, right? So what percent of that dollar amount per unit delivered is fixed costs versus the variable costs?
I think the dollar amount fixed cost is 1.7 million and the variable was 1.9 million. So it's darn near, but your
Okay.
base rates are only covering 30% of your fixed rates. So we're trying
Yeah.
to
Gotcha. And that's kind of where I wanted to try to get at with why we picked that 50%, right? Because I know 50% is the guideline, but if our fixed costs aren't 50%, because every utility is different, then I would want to shift that guideline. But it sounds we're pretty close, maybe a little under. It sounds like we're coming in a little under anyway. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the base assumptions here. So first off, we've got values coming up against business principles. One of our values is that we want to mitigate water usage. So mitigating water usage favors a low fixed cost for that low meter rate, and a higher unit rate so that people use less. I like that we built in a 2-tier structure component to this. I'm wondering what additional costs implementing a 2-tier structure what we might incur in terms of additional costs. We've talked about staff time in terms of maintaining a 2-tier structure. Are we losing some efficiency by going to that structure?
And let me clarify, you mean the 3-tier consumption?
Oh, I'm sorry.
2-step.
My apologies. The stepped consumption model based on usage, right? So if you use more, you get charged more. I was using an imprecise term. Thank you.
Yeah, so there will be, through this rate model, we're going to be looking at all the accounts and adjusting all the accounts. Our current billing software, we can build in those fixed unit costs where it changes. So once utility billing is set up, then there's very little personnel time.
So I heard we're doing that work anyway, regardless, and so there's no additional personnel time there. Great. And then the next, and this kind of goes to the base of all of those beautiful charts that you created with the red and green. I don't believe that we should be making money on every gallon that we make or that we sell. In a perfect world, and I recognize that a perfect world maybe doesn't exist. In a perfect world, based on our values, we should be delivering the service for what it costs to deliver, right? So we should be netting pretty dang close to zero with a little tiny bit of a buffer across all of those figures. Now, when I look at the way those charts are tiered, I see when we look at what's proposed, I see our highest earning when we're bringing in most money is for, single family households that are using as little as possible in many regards. And so, if I look at, and I'm going to look specifically at the smaller unit sizes, when I see those greens, right, those greens are located in that top range of the chart with less units, kind of across the board. And so what I would ask is just to try to mitigate that as you go forward, right? Mitigate the cost to the households that are single family households using the least, right? We want to try to shoot for zero across the board, but mitigate those lower users, that cost. And then finally, I would also, and I'm trying to be brief, my apologies, I would also ask why, just out of curiosity, why we're using 9.3 as kind of that base that base assumption through a lot of these charts. At the beginning, I thought that you had said that 7 units was the average number of units that a household in Monmouth uses.
It was 9.3 units or 7,000 gallons.
Oh, I thought that 1,000 gallons was a unit. No.
Yeah, there's a curse in that our meters read in cubic feet or 100 cubic feet, and most people think in gallons. So
the old metric versus imperial. Okay.
The unit we sell is in 100 cubic.
Well, I retract that question. Thank you. I tried to be quick. I think you've done some great work, and that's my feedback.
Great. Councilor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my first question is, at some point we decided that having 7 tiers was efficient. Why would going down to 3 be more efficient? Because it would seem that you can make reasonable financial decisions on those specific tiers. So why would it be better to have 3? And that's probably your whole presentation, and I'm sorry I didn't follow that.
So you said 7 tiers. Currently, the cities only has the single tier.
No, meter.
Okay, yes.
Meter classes.
Yeah, sorry, thank
7
you.
meter classes.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
7 meter classes simplified in 3 makes it much easier on the billing when there's any billing changes, okay? Go ahead.
No.
You have 2,997 customers that we reviewed. So we have to take that 3/4 inch and then extract some of those, because those 3/4 inches might be a business. Okay, the State Farm insurance agent that's now converted a house. It's not a single family residential, it's a commercial entity. Okay. And then you have Western Oregon University here and all of those dorms. And they use a lot of water. Okay. So we're just trying to simplify that as far as the billing goes and take this 16-page spreadsheet and kind of narrow it down to make it easier on the admin side.
And we actually find that we've got way more errors in how our accounts are set up because of all the additional meter classes that we have.
One other question. I have a concern of, I like the idea of charging more as you use more water. How are you going to do that, though? And one of the things I think is really great about Monmouth is that people have gardens, and they, maybe we don't need grass, but we have definitely plants in the summer that need watering. In the summer months, would they have to pay more? In which case it would actually have a negative impact on how Monmouth looks in the summertime? Or is it going to take the average of the year? How are you planning to do that so we don't punish people in the summer for having pretty yards, which is what we really want, I think?
Sure, yeah. So that first tier, or the least amount per charge per unit, will be from 0 to 10,000 gallons. And I'm sorry, I'm confusing Mr. Lopez. 0 to 10 units. And if most people are using 9.3, okay, now that 9.3 again is an average, because in this wintertime they may use 4, and in the summertime they may use 14. Now they will be charged more because they're going to get into that next tier, whatever that charge is. What we cannot base this study on is someone individual who loves their gardens and loves their yard, and they're using 31, 32, 35 units of water. They will have a $200 or $300 or $400 water bill, but they're using that much water. And it comes back down to that delivery rate for you folks not to lose money or break even or lose money on that delivery.
I think it's also important to recognize that the increased cost is for the gallons that are used over that 10 units. So most, there'll be an incremental cost in each gallon or unit over the 10 units that are sold. So it's not like that month every bit of water that they use is at that higher rate. It's only the excess or that more. And it's part of this notion that we're trying to promote some conservation. And so we'll continue to do the public education on how much water do you need to use to have a green lawn and not spongy front yards. So yes, there are going to be people that are going to pay more, but I don't think we're looking at a punishing type of effect with these rates.
Because the other thing I'm worried about is they'll stop showering as they.
Councillor Ridgway, and then Councillor Ridgway, then Councillor Overs.
Thank you. I noticed the 2997 total connections. Do you know about how many of those are outside of the city? Is that a large chunk or very small?
I think we got about around 15 connections that are outside of the city.
Okay, so that's not.
It's not a large number.
Okay. My other question was about the industry standard for that 1.2%, if that's locked in or if that's something that can be variable, but really it wouldn't matter with that small number of households. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Dang it. There's a good chance. Okay. Councillor Over.
So I agree with Carol on needing to keep things nice in the summertime. However, I've done my whole garden in drip, and I don't water plants that want to go dormant in the summertime, grass. So I have a brown lawn, but my garden is very, very green, and I use very little water as a result. And I do see folks watering at noon. I see folks watering sidewalks. I see the Roth Center watering the entire parking lot at times. I have a feeling this will help with that people will start to tighten up their water use. I'm going to go back to the questions on the very last page and say for myself, 2 steps towards a 50% base rate.
Thanks, Councillor Oberst. I'm going to go through those real quickly for everyone as long as all of our questions.
I was trying to start that discussion.
Well, I'm going to go one at a time. So let me facilitate, and when you can let me know what you think. So are there any other questions before we try to help them? Good.
I know we're not doing things for individual users, but when I look at the tiered rates, I don't remember if I'm using the right term. The pipe size rates for our largest users, those are rather expensive. Quite frankly, I'd like to keep those rather expensive. They're using a lot of our drinking water. I don't know if there's any room for, once you hit a certain size, you have an independent contract with that user. I know in the grants world, we do that as opposed to just a master grant agreement that would apply to all others. But with those high users of water that are using our community's drinking water, that at some point we're going to install a water system to filter and do all kinds of things too. I want to charge those users appropriately as well if they're using our drinking waters to dump on fields. So look for answers there, not any specific direction.
Yeah, I'll just say that those are based off of AWWA's industry standards, and so I'm pretty comfortable using those as the standard.
Yeah, it looks like they already are in our current structure. 6-inch is over $128. I mean, it's way, so, yeah.
And my comment was not so much on the current structure, but on the future reduction of those classes, I'm gonna say.
I get it. All right, so generally speaking, we have lots of other opportunities to go through all this. How do folks feel about this proposal of getting us more towards covering the base costs, which is the step to go from the $24 up to the $38. So what the two-step would do is give us an $8.51 increase in the base rate the first year and a $5 increase the second year. Question, do it all at once, take a big bite, divide it up like that, or ask them to propose something else? Go ahead, put your mics on and give shout out.
I'm saying 2 tiers.
Carol, 1 tier, 2 tiers, or some other breakdown?
Yeah, I was thinking more like 3.
John?
I'm seeing the optional 2-year, the step 2, 38, so that would be a bigger bite. I'm more for the incremental bite. Is that the 1 year or step 1, or is that 2? Step 1, changes step 1. Set base rate would go to 33.53. Okay.
Yeah, that's the moving in 2 steps. The first year would be $8.51, getting you up to $33. The second year would be a $5 increase, getting you up to $38.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I mean, we're coming off 5 years of 5% increase in our rates. I think we need to make sure, I mean, we can probably tolerate that, but and this softens out a little. It also gets us closer to, covering our sort of base. We got a goal of 50. We're not going to get there right away, but I think that's a good way to start.
Okay. Chris?
I like the 2-step, and I like keeping it a little south of 50%.
2-step.
2-step.
Okay.
And I meant 3 steps, so obviously that one didn't work, but.
Right. Yeah, no, I know what you meant. Okay, so 2 steps, and that percentage split of the upfront cost at the top sounds okay. All right, so keep our current single tier consumption rate. Everybody pays the same rate, basically, no matter how much they use, or go to multi-tier consumption, which is a conservation method.
3 tiers.
I would agree with the multi-tier.
Yeah, I'm a multi-tier guy too.
Multi-tier.
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 And then our third question, a little bit more complicated, right? So this is talking about building up these reserves for capital expenditures and making that part of the formula. So a priority focus on the capital improvement planning, and looking at, right now, we're doing sort of this 3-year to 5-year timeline. Do we want to really plan for that 20-year timeline, even though that's going to cost, right? We're building up those reserves earlier on, hopefully be able to take advantage of projects if they're needed or they come up, right? So there's several things in there, but what are you thinking generally about building up those reserves.
As we build up those reserves, assuming that we go in that direction, what will be implemented to prevent us from spending those things on other things in the interim?
Yeah, I think that's a great question and a great observation. No, exactly. I think we can look at a special capital reserve fund. I can talk with Amy about that, where those funds are dedicated into a line item.
Okay, and then do I see 6 options under this one? Are these unique options here?
No, it's really, I think the mayor said it well. Do you want to stick with just looking at our known capital expenditures over the next 3 to 5 years and an average of what that is and build that into the rate, or look at the 20-year average of planned capital expenditures and build that into the rate?
And what we're in dollars and cents, you're looking at a 1.1 million, a 1.4 million, a 1.7 million, and I think a 1.4 million. And that over time is 1.4 million over the next 3 or 5 years. But then we came together because those expenses really start to kind of taper off. They don't go down to zero, but they taper off in years 7, 8, 9, 10. And the rest is, hey, our master plan calls out for this much money over the next 20 years. We both went, well, that's about $1 million a year. And it actually came out to $925,000 for that year, for each year over the 20 years. I've said before, I don't think it's fair that we ask you to make a decision going out 6, 7 years. It's just not. There's too many things that can change in that period of time. But, we can, whatever your recommendations are, we can just take that number and build it right back into the study. And knowing that the shorter term will be a higher cost line item.
Wow. Yeah, it sucks to have to make decisions now for councils down the road. Get off a little easier. All right, Councilor Carey, you had a question or comment, and then Councilor Ober.
Just that a lot of things can change. I mean, to your point, who knows what the hell's going to happen in 20 years? We may have this regional water thing that is throw the whole thing into the works, or maybe not. I think one of the things is we're looking at these rates, we're looking at everything. We've not looked at any of the capital projects. I mean, there's no consideration of any rethinking of some of that. So that can't be thought of as a 100%, can't be touched. If our rates are going to be pushed at a rate far beyond what we think we have appetite for. But to the specific question, I like the way, because Russ has done a good job of laying things out in that near term. And I think we need to stick with that personally.
John.
Just to clarify, if we say 3 to 5 years, we're talking an average of about 1.4 million. And if we talk the 20-year span, we're saying the average every year is 925. So we're talking $500,000-ish difference between those, 900,000 versus 1.4. Okay, just wanted to make sure that everybody was on that page. Start down that end this time, Cece.
All right, Jason, you're up.
Personally, I like the shorter term planning myself. I think it gives us more flexibility. I'd be curious about a 2-year option, 2, 3, or 4 years down the road. But that's my thought on it.
The onset is it's 1.4 million, okay, with the hopes that in 4 years it'll drop to 600,000, and it won't. I mean, cost of everything's going up. So, but thank you.
Sure. Or holding steady for a while. We don't know, but projecting out 20 years, I think would be really a little risky, and to make those kinds of decisions based on what we know now, which isn't a whole lot.
Roxanne.
Yeah, thanks for starting at this end.
I wrote, that's okay. Yeah, I wrote myself a note. Yes, implement cash flow forecasting. I didn't write a number of years.
I would agree. I think forecasting too long, 20 years is an awful long time. So sticking within that 4-year range is probably more realistic.
I want to make sure I'm understanding what the question I'm about to answer. So I heard that the shorter time frame is more expensive because we're spreading those dollars over a shorter period of collection, no?
Yeah, we have a series of large capital expenditures in our near horizon, but that tapers off once you get out beyond what we're looking at in the study. And that was the reason for looking at the longer 20-year master plan and grabbing an average off of that.
And if we did that 20 years, we'd be financing some of it. Because we need those projects soon, right? No?
Actually, yes, you're correct. Yep, we would need to finance. We're going to need to finance the near-term projects anyhow.
Okay.
We've got like 1.2 in reserve, and these projects are going to be beyond that. Yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful in my decision making. If we're financing anyway, then I'd suggest that we stick with what I view as a standard CIP timeline is 5 years.
Yeah, let's stick with what we're doing.
I am just not working with the group tonight. I actually can see the benefit of having that longer range of 20-year planning. We didn't, who thought that Oregon would have to start conserving water? We didn't see the water treatment plant coming. So I think 20 years is fine, but never mind. I'm the only one.
And I was leaning that way, Carol, but I gotta say, knowing the regulatory regime that we face in this state at times, who knows what's gonna come our way in another year or two that we're gonna have to build into what we're doing. And so I would be in favor of keeping it a short time horizon of 3 to 5 and making sure we can handle the projects we've identified and be prepared in us or another council in a few years to revisit this topic.
If I could just make one other comment, I actually trust Mr. Cooper. So if you would say 3 to 5, I would go, that's what we want to do. But I was doing it on my own.
He's probably going to retire, so he doesn't care. So and I don't get. I could wait my vote because I would go with 20 as well because that is our master plan. We have a 20-year master plan that we've had to create that talks about capital projects. I would be thinking that way, but I don't get extra votes. So
I can be convinced.
I think we've got good direction to send Tim back to his magic, and we'll after the first of the year we'll be back with a report. And I shouldn't say that may be a little soon, but I'm anticipating as soon as we can get back in front of you with the final report.
okay, thank you. We appreciate it, Tim. Thanks. Thanks for making that super understandable.
Yeah,
Actually.
thank you. This is a lot of work.
Yeah. At this time, I actually am going to take the liberty of asking if we can adjourn or recess this meeting and go to our urban renewal meeting and take care of that real quickly since we've had our guests waiting. So seeing that, I will put the Monmouth City Council into recess and adjourn the Monmouth Urban Renewal Agency and ask Phyllis to take the roll call, please.
Sure.
Mr. Carey,
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Present.
Ms. McKeel,
Here.
Mr. Oberst,
Yes.
Mr. Ridgway,
Here.
Ms. Kuntz.
I am present, and we will deal with public comment and consent calendar after we start the business agenda. So we'll call Community and Economic Development Director Suzanne Duffner up for a presentation.
Good evening. Thank you. So I'll just be real brief. Hopefully you've had a chance to review the staff report this evening for a general grant assistance request that the city received. This is for St. Hilda's Episcopal Church located at 245 Main Street West, so just a block or so west of here. They have submitted a request for a general assistance grant in the amount of $12,992.50. That's 50% of the project cost estimate. The project work includes replacing hazardous sidewalks, a driveway that isn't, or two driveways that don't conform to city code requirements, a concrete stairwell that has cracks and is also some hazardous condition, and replace some street trees that have been removed. So there's actually 3 tax lots that it involves. Gonna have a copy of the estimates from the contractors, both the tree service that would plant the trees and the concrete company that would do the sidewalk and the driveway approach work. The applicant did a great job of really documenting with all those photos the deplorable conditions of the sidewalks, the cracks, the erosion. They've had somebody trip and fall and get hurt, so time is of the essence. And we thank them for recognizing that is needed to replace that. So they do have the match, the 50% match through a grant through the Board of Trustees of the Episcopal Diocese of Oregon. So they're able to start work on this immediately as soon as they can get the contractor lined up and weather permits. In terms of the criteria for approving the grant, it is consistent with the goals and objectives of our urban renewal plan, which are to promote a unified and cohesive downtown Main Street district and do infrastructure improvements and building improvements. So sidewalks being part of that critical infrastructure to get people to come in and walk in. This is one of the entryways into our downtown. So, and the application also documents work that the Episcopal Church is doing on their side of the property to improve a labyrinth space open to the public, and they also have meeting rooms that the public can reserve. So appreciate the great community space as well for that. So alternatives motions are in the packet for you. In terms of fiscal implications, we did budget $45,000 this fiscal year for urban renewal grants. This is the first one out of the gate, so we do have funds available. So staff is recommending approval. There's a sample motion when you're ready for it, and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have about the project.
Questions about the project or Councilor Carey? Mr. Carey, excuse me.
One of the big question that I have, it seems to fit, tick all the boxes for us. I was a little confused and I couldn't really tell on the pictures. Does this include the driveway onto the property on the west and east side? Or are we talking about the sidewalk, the approach, and the stairs?
It does include repairing the driveway approaches, both the west and east driveways. There's a section of sidewalk that was replaced not in the not too distant past. It does not need to be replaced, but the remaining section of the sidewalk that's closer to the, I guess, east side of the property does need to be replaced. And then, yes, it includes the stairwell that leads up to the church front entrance. Mm-hmm.
When you say driveway approach, that would be part of the sidewalk. That would
correct. Yeah, it's that area that transitions with the sidewalk. So
Right.
You have the apron as it comes out to meet the street, and then the portion that would end with where this as far back as the sidewalk goes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not necessarily the driveway
Further back into the thank you for
well, this is pedestrian safety. This does all the sorts of things. It improves the appearance. Those are my only questions.
Mr. Lopez.
So when I look at this, the first thing I think is why isn't this being wrapped into our existing sidewalk improvement funds? But if memory serves me correctly, those are only available for residences. Is that correct? So we do have a sidewalk improvement grant process.
We
as
do
well.
have a sidewalk improvement grant process, and actually the applicant can apply for that in addition to these grant funds, and that could be part of the match if they needed it, above and beyond what the Episcopal Church is able to grant. So yes, those I believe the church has contacted Public Works, Mark Landau, and he's confirmed that they are eligible, that it's not just residences, is my understanding. So,
okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great. All right. And then just a statement about, a walkable city, and walking is part of our key transportation. We had a presentation from our transportation board earlier, or commission earlier. This I think is pretty turnkey and has my support. Thank you.
Questions, or there are sample motion in your pack?
I move to approve the general assistance grant application for 1/2 of the eligible project expenses in an amount not to exceed $13,000 for the proposed sidewalk and related improvements located at 245 Main Street West.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ridgway, for the motion, and Mr. Lopez for the second. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, Phyllis, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Coons?
Aye.
Ms. Belts?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Sorry for making you wait, but yes.
Mr. Ridgway?
Aye.
Mr. Lopez?
Aye.
Ms. McKeel?
Yes.
Mr. Oberst?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right.
Great. Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, thank you for waiting. And we couldn't even come up with a question for you, but we really, really appreciate that you're going to undertake this work. That's great. Okay, thanks, Suzanne. We will go ahead, just while we're in the urban renewal, were there any public comments submitted, Phyllis, for the agency?
There were none received, Mayor Kuntz.
And I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar, which included the minutes of the Urban Renewal Agency meeting of June 3rd.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst, for the motion. We'll give that second to Ms. Belts. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right, that concludes the business of the Urban Renewal Agency. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Oberst. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 And then opposed, we are adjourned, and we will return to the council meeting for the briefest of comments, people, so that we can get out of here. All right, so in that vein, will skip the mayor's report. We do have one board and commission appointment before us, and that is actually Chris Nicolai, who applied for a tree board position and included, maybe unbeknownst to him, one of the most important qualifications, that he does have equipment to plant trees with. That was nice of him to add that. So I would like to appoint Chris Nicolai to the tree advisory.
Move approval of the appointment.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst, for the motion, and Councillor McKeel for the second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Perfect. And any really urgent reports, boards or commission meetings, Councillor?
The tree planting contest is coming up. Keep your eyes peeled. If you know people who might benefit by a tree in the front yard, let them know. We're going up to $150 a tree this year, which is splits $75 from the city, $75 from the property owner.
Counselor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today we had an emergency meeting of the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. This Homeless Alliance is the COC, the Continuum of Care. So it's essentially an arm of our local joint municipalities and how we communicate with HUD and compete for federal dollars. The nature of the meeting was due to the NOFO. And so NOFO is Notice of Funding Opportunity. That is what HUD just released. It was actually we had the budget shutdown, and the budget shutdown lifted a couple weeks ago. Within 24 hours of the continuing resolution being signed, this NOFO was released. And what the NOFO does is it is designed to explicitly disadvantage West Coast states in competition for federal homelessness dollars. It also strips out the ability of local jurisdictions to be able to place place emphasis on a specific kind of housing that's permanent supportive housing. And this permanent supportive housing is often for individuals who are veterans, who are medically unable to, sustain themselves over long periods of time, individuals who need that additional help. These are the most frail of our individuals who need community support. So specifically, what this does, or what this is intended to do, is it is intended to make permanent supportive housing, and that includes rapid rehousing rental assistance as a category of permanent supportive housing. It makes that a maximum of 30% of the funding going to our region can go to permanent supportive housing. Now, to give you a sense of scope, our region currently, and by region I mean Marion and Polk counties, currently receive $3.7 million in federal funds. And these are for an array of housing programs. These serve, domestic violence survivors, homeless women with disabilities, families, young adults, and youth. Now, those are not speculative categories. Those are the actual categories of the programs in our communities that these funds support. And so with this amount of federal funding, we are looking at likely losing 136 of our 157 total beds. So that's 136 additional individuals within our region that will be turned out on the streets. Now, we're largely hamstrung through the HUD process in terms of what we can or can't do. I wanted to make you all aware in case you received community questions about this. We have seen some reporting in the Salem Reporter and KTU and other spaces. I believe as the implications of this are better understood, more of those questions will come out. Now, a lot of this is yet to be written in terms of what other programs could these funds go to. I have more bad news. The HUD NOFO was also designed to reduce the total amount of funding that's available to our region. So historically, HUD has recognized that continuity of programming is critical for services because it takes a while to spin up a program. It also takes a while to spin down one, just like any business. And so they used to hold 90% of a region's funding harmless. So they would guarantee 90%. Thank you. They have reduced that to 30%. only 30% will be considered tier one. So only 30% of that $3.7 million in federal funds are we guaranteed to receive. I'm happy to share more information as it comes, and I will wrap this up, but I appreciate you entertaining me as we're late on time. Thank you.
Anything else that is critical this week? We'll ask our city manager pro tem for a brief update.
Thank you, Mayor. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip most of this. I think most of it's mentioned in Friday notes and or on the website and the newsletter. So I will just add that in the lobby out here, just thankful for the Arts and Culture Commission for selecting our former finance director, Susie Marston's artwork for display this month as part of the rotating art gallery. I was heard from staff today. It was emotional in a lot of ways, and people were saying that she was everywhere today, and it was pretty special. So you all have the flyer regarding the reception as well. And then just real briefly, again, there's a lot of good work being done in the city. This weekend is the holiday tree lighting parade, and that is at 6 o'clock. There are some events that are before and after on Western's campus. And I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Oberst. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.